Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to call our Committee of the Whole meeting to order. First with our land acknowledgement for Center Wellington. We are meeting on lands that have been home to Indigenous nations since time immemorial. We acknowledge we are on the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, as well as the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee. With increasing encroachment by non-Indigenous settlers in the area now known as the Township of Center Wellington, the Mississaugas could not continue their traditional lifestyle and retreated to villages along the Credit River, eventually settling in the Grand River Valley. The Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation uphold their treaty rights within our jurisdiction. Today, the Township of Center Wellington remains home to Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. We are grateful to have the opportunity to share and respect Mother Earth and are committed to building constructive and cooperative relationships with Indigenous nations. And any addendums or corrections to the agenda today? Okay, seeing none. Disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Mayor Waters.
Item 8.6, have a working relationship with the engineering firm. Item 8.6, have a working relationship with the engineering firm working on this project.
Okay. Thanks, Barb. Councillor Wilton.
Item 9.4, there's a report from a company that I have family relationships with.
Okay. Any others? No? Okay. Moving along, we have the approval and adoption of minutes from the Committee of the Whole, February 13th. Recommendation is that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held February 13th, 2023 be adopted as circulated. Do I have somebody to make a motion for that? Councillor Evoy, and a seconder, Councillor McDonald, and all in favor. Oh, what? Okay, we have a typo.
It's minor, but it kind of makes a difference. I'll confirm with Colin. On page 6, it refers to requesting that data be provided on farm level water capacity. I think it should be firm. Firm. Yeah. I know I talk about farms a lot.
So as amended.
As amended? Okay. Do I have to make a new motion? Approved as amended?
No, we'll take the amendment and we'll just approve as amended.
Okay. Then all in favor? Very good. That's everybody. So that's carried. And now moving along to our presentations and announcements. We have Carl Gray with the South Wellington Community Lions Branch regarding the support for Trade Tracks and the Trade Tracks event. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm here representing the South Wellington Community Lions Branch Club, and we're creating a new event in Fergus called the Trade Tracks, and it's a trades showcase and symposium, May 5th and 6th at the Fergus Fairgrounds. We've invited more than 500 tradespeople to attend to put on a show for young people to see what trades there are to become tradespeople and have a great career. We've also invited and have attending 2 colleges, Niagara and Conestoga, to be there as the educational branch. We have 3 government organizations coming to help make the connections, and we've invited 14 school boards and personally invited 44 high schools to bring their kids. The attendance numbers are now over 500 kids to see this event. The event is free to attend. We want people to walk in and see the show. We don't want to be charging people. We have accepted CWDHS's offer to be associated with the event, and they're going to do a lot of the food at the event for us. Their culinary arts department. So The event is created to give the students and the public a chance to see up close what all our local tradespeople do and see what a great career there is. Some of the factors to consider for this event are 65% of the tradespeople in the province of Ontario are over the age of 50. So not only do we lose those tradespeople very soon, we also lose the education for the trade for apprentices because they take all their experience with them. The government of Ontario acknowledges that by 2030 there will be a shortage of more than 100,000 tradespeople in the province of Ontario. Linamar told me on Friday that their recruiting now is such that they are paying the expenses for people to move from as far away as the Maritimes to be employed at theirs because the shortage is here. So we believe the young people need to see what a very viable career is. We also need to get rid of the stigma that's attached with being a tradesperson. There's certain stigmas that go with it. And I was at an event in Toronto where a crane operator told me that he made more than $250,000 last year. So to say that trades aren't a viable career is crazy. So we need to change that outlook. Someone said to me the other day, we are competing with the Fergus Home Show, which is the following weekend. My suggestion is that we're not competing, we're a complement. We're showing people how their house is getting built. Fergus is going to show them how to decorate it. So I've come here today because this is our first event, and my whole committee of 3 that is putting this event on is here. We'd like to ask council to forgo the rental charges. We understand that council can't give us a grant, and our event is happening before the community grants are awarded this year. So we would like to ask council to forego the rental charges for the facility in Fergus to hold this event. Any questions?
Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Jefferson, thank you so much for bringing this to Center Wellington and coming up with the idea, because currently I can't find anyone to fix my generator attached to my house. But furthermore, I have a son in the trades, and it was a similar establishment like this where he learned he could do something in aviation that was a little bit different. So this is much needed, and I completely agree, and I will be supporting it. I agree with what you said, how, yes, the home show is right after, but that is a different view on how to learn about other things. This is about educating kids. So I'm so happy to hear there's 2 colleges attending, so that's amazing. I guess my question is, have you had any military colleges reach out to you too?
The Armed Forces are very close to signing on to being here
Are they?
as the Armed Forces.
Okay.
Yes. Because they represent 109 different trades.
Yes.
That's the one that, going through the list of trades, I was a tradesman for 48 years.
Yeah.
And the list is still blowing me away every time I open it up, so.
Yeah. Oh, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you. As an educator and someone who's worked closely with our school boards and has raised a lot, have done a lot of events in our venues, I don't know the ruling around what that looks like to waive the fee. I know that every event that I've ever been involved in that does it there doesn't get the fee waived. So I would like to have some discussion around what that looks like and whether or not that's in our purview. As a new councillor, I'm transparent in saying I don't know that it is or isn't, but I know that we've never been able to before. However, maybe we can align it some way with the upcoming grant, and so I look forward to that discussion at this table. I will, however, congratulate you on this very important event. I personally have never seen trades as anything to be anything except excited and proud of. And the fact that we are actively looking to create and make pathways for future tradespeople is definitely something I celebrate with every bit of me. So thank you and your committee for all the hard work you've clearly done to make this happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Mayor Waters?
Yeah, again, I'd like to thank you for putting this together. I've been involved in a few, been involved in a few things, putting events together, and I know how difficult it can be. I appreciate all the hard work. Committee of Three, the Mighty Three, I call it. It's important that, you know, that this is such an important area for our community and and also for Ontario. As we're all aware, province recently said we got to build 1.5 million homes, and it's going to be a real challenge. But it's going to be through these types of programs that we introduce young people to this area, and obviously it's very important for the growth and healthy growth of our community. And it's also important to have a balance of folks, whether it be in trades or whether it be in other areas of employment. But this is definitely, I appreciate all your efforts here, and I know this, and all you've put a lot of work to it, I can tell. I would be interested in sort of maybe getting an overview in terms of what sort of our typical cost of that it is, and just so we get a clear understanding of the ask. So,
Just one note on the province's involvement. The province had a $90 million skills development fund that closed at the end of January. We asked for $10,000 of that and were turned down. So that's why we're here.
Councillor Adams?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. So it's a free event. Do you expect any forms of revenue during the event, or is this all like?
Other than donations, no. I'm sorry. We will be selling. We're selling a magazine with advertising. That's our funding model, and the high school students, we've offered that magazine to them to sell because we're raising money for a this is to raise money for scholarships for the young people, because we were told by a person at Centre Wellington District High School that last year they gave away $80,000 in scholarships and bursaries, and none of it went to people going into the technical trades. So we need to support those people.
Councillor Wilton?
Oh, thank you for your presentation. My question is actually more for Dan, I think, is what process would we follow to kind of acknowledge the request and next steps?
Thank you, and through the Deputy Mayor, what I suggest is that Council direct this back to staff for a report, and we can do that fairly quickly. If not it may not be March Council, but maybe April Committee of the Whole meeting, we can bring an information report back to Council, and you can consider it at that time.
Is it a question for Carl? Okay.
Based on that timing that you just heard, Carl, will that suit you?
Yes, our event's running May 5th and 6th. We don't have a lot of expenses till April when we start paying for advertising and stuff. And the venue and stuff will all have to be paid at that time. But until then, we have the costs covered. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so then we should be making a motion that the council refer this request of the South Wellington Community Lions for waiving of the rental fee to the trade track event to staff for a report. And you would like to motion that? So we have Councillor Wilton to motion. Councillor McDonald will second it. All in favor? And that's all of us, so that's carried. So we'll do a report. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. You too. Alrighty, for our next presentation, we all have Sally Litchfield, CEO of Centre Wellington Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, and welcome, Sally.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks, everyone, for having me. Sorry, I snuck in, Kim, and you didn't know I was here. I'll wave next time. As you know, my name is Sally Litchfield, and I'm the CEO of the Centre Wellington Chamber of Commerce. I've been in this role since, oh wow, I'm on the big screen, since November 2020, which, in case you're wondering, was quite a time to step into a leadership role of an association that supports businesses, if you think back to where we all were in 2020. Today, I'm pleased to be here to take the opportunity to share a little bit more about what the Centre Wellington Chamber of Commerce is and what our role is within the community. The term Chamber of Commerce is one of those interesting terms that we all nod along to and feel like we have an understanding of. And if we actually pause and think how we would articulate that, that's maybe where things get a little interesting. It's not a simple definition. A Chamber of Commerce is a type of business association. Chambers in general around the world have been around since the 1400s, which means it's somewhat of an antiquated term, but we're working with it. A Chamber of Commerce serves a niche group of business owners and leaders. In our case, and in the case of many of our peers across the province and the country, our niche is geographically determined. We serve the businesses that are both located in Centre Wellington and those who serve the Centre Wellington community. Other chambers choose their niche. For example, there is a Canadian LGBT+ Chamber of Commerce. The niche group of business owners that they serve are those who identify as LGBT+ entrepreneurs within Canada. Existing to support a business community is sometimes as far as the similarities go. How independent chambers choose to do that differs, changes, and evolves. Locally, as the CWCC, we are Wellington County's largest business association. We are an independent, nonprofit organization. We do not receive any government funding, and we are member-driven, funded 100% by our membership base. We are a small but mighty team of myself and 2 other staff members, and as a nonprofit, we are governed and supported by a board of directors made up of local business leaders. Our membership structure is annual fees that are based on number of full-time employees, and we strive to keep that as low as possible, and then add-ons beyond that, attending events, advertising, participating in programs, are pay to play, intentionally so that members may choose where they engage. We have seen about a 15% increase in membership over the past 2 years, and we now have over 380 members, which represents close to 1/3 of businesses in Centre Wellington. Benchmarked against other chambers who serve geographical niches, that's quite good. Although a number of you have had the pleasure of sitting on committees with me and you know that quite good isn't really my goal. We are working towards a membership of 500 businesses, and then probably we'll move the mark beyond that. To put it very simply, we exist to support the local business community. A thriving business community is critical to the success of the greater community. A thriving business community has employees that are injecting money into the community, has businesses supporting community activities, etc. A thriving business community supports a strong local economy. And a strong local economy is critical, as all of you guys know. Another way to look at us then is that we are a community-centric organization. We create community prosperity. Chambers are able to bring together the players on a community or a business issue and work together to fill the gaps. That might be solving problems, creating programs, advising on solutions, or simply facilitating conversations. We do everything through the business community because business provides the economic power to solve problems. Building and maintaining a strong local economy rises the tide in the community, and a rising tide raises all boats. Couldn't resist. We do this by remaining fluid and flexible because our sphere of purpose is quite literally whatever it takes and whenever the opportunities present themselves. I'll provide an example here. In May of 2021, we were presented with an opportunity to distribute rapid screening kits. This was through the chamber network within Ontario, and chambers across the province were given the opportunity to opt in. The federal government was sitting on hundreds of thousands of kits, but had not yet been able to find a way to distribute them. We opted in. It was the right thing to do. It was a way for us to help protect businesses so that they could do business. There were no dollars attached to this program initially. Our team was already performing well beyond maximum capacity, but we said yes, it's what we do. We put a call out to our community for support, and within days we had a location provided by a business, sponsorship dollars, and a system established. Over the next 18 months, we distributed approximately 70,000 rapid screening kits to the businesses of Wellington County. We made it work for the community, because it's what we do. We recently underwent an internal strategic planning process and determined 3 strategic pillars that our day-to-day operations fall under. The first there is connection. We maximize the member experience by connecting members with new partners and providing opportunities to collaborate through our various networking and advertising platforms. This pillar, connection, is perhaps where our brains go first when we think of chamber activities, networking programs, events, etc. But it goes beyond that. Our network is our largest asset. I can't single-handedly support 400 businesses. financially or emotionally, but they can support each other. I say all the time, we can't make people do business with you, but we can get you in a room full of people who might be interested. We can't make the magic happen, but we can foster the environment where the magic might happen. Because business people talking business is a magical thing. Everything we plan under this pillar is done very intentionally to foster the environment where the magic might happen. And the needs of that environment changes regularly. What the business needed pre-pandemic is different than what they needed during the pandemic and is different than what they need now post-pandemic and recovery and as we face ongoing issues. What we're doing this year isn't necessarily the blueprint for the next couple of years. We are responsive to member needs, and it means we change how we do things sometimes. The second pillar of our strategic pillars is knowledge. We are the community leader in sharing relevant and current information and updates as they impact the local business community. We think of it as knowledge translation and transfer. What does this mean? How does it impact our businesses? This was a critical lifeline for businesses during the pandemic. We had members share that they were able to stop watching the provincial press conferences. They knew if it impacted them, we'd send out an email within hours, which did mean we were working the Friday before every single long weekend because that's when the conferences were. Our focus this year in the knowledge pillar is sharing this content in a variety of ways, from social media, emails, blogs, videos, live events. I have 7 tabs open on my computer right now about how to start a podcast. The understanding that all people don't want to receive information in the same way, be that educational information, relevant updates. So we're expanding our offerings to accommodate that. The last pillar is influence. We assist in creating the conditions for growth and enhancing the competitiveness and inclusivity of the Centre Wellington business community through communication and government relations. These advocacy efforts and activities differentiate us from other organizations that support businesses. At the tables we sit around, we represent the voice of the Centre Wellington business community. We provide anecdotal evidence of things happening in our community. We can bring members to the table. We can bring data to the table. We can activate the business community in a way that no other organization can. I will mention the Ontario and Canadian chambers here because I think it's important to clarify. They are partners of ours and we lean heavily on them when it comes to provincial and federal advocacy, but they're not our parent organizations. They don't provide us with funding. In fact, we pay to be members of theirs. We remain independent, but we leverage that relationship when it comes to advocacy and when it comes to buying power from an affinity program perspective. There are more chambers in Ontario than provincial ridings. At chamber network tables, which I sit around weekly, we have representation from every corner of the province. We make sure that the Centre Wellington voice is heard. Yes, this is happening in our community. Yes, our businesses could use support in this area. No, we don't think that's the right way to do that. We help determine provincial advocacy priorities or outline if there are bigger priorities. From a membership perspective, there are certainly many pathways that a member can take through a chamber membership, and every member takes a slightly different path with slightly different goals under different pillars. We work hard to customize the member experience wherever possible and provide as much value as possible. That said, as with any membership, you get out what you put into it. There's an element here of community investment. We exist to create community prosperity, to build a strong local economy. If that's something that resonates with a business, we hope they're members of ours. It's an investment in the greater business community. I wanted to close with just a few thoughts on what this all means for you. First and foremost, this network is yours to engage with, whether that's on an individual level, as a council, or township. Consider us a resource. If you want to know how the business community feels about something, it is as simple as asking. I don't always know, but I can always find out. I'd like to encourage you to keep the channels of communication open, not just from a perspective of providing updates to the businesses, but beyond that. What are you hearing? What are we hearing? Are there opportunities for us to work together to fill a gap? Filling gaps is what we do. And lastly, community issues are business issues, and we look forward to being at those tables. Thank you for continuing to invite us to the table. We look forward to being impactful together, making Centre Wellington the very best place to live, work, and play. I might have stole that directly from you guys. Happy to answer any questions if I didn't go over time, Kim.
Thank you very much, Sally. Is there questions? Councillor Eloy?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, thank you so much, Sally, deeply appreciated. Again, being transparent, I didn't realize that you did regular updates here. That's really exciting. And I look forward to hearing, I've had the opportunity to see you do your thing, and you're killing it. You are making our chamber rise above so many others. You're doing a great job. I've seen the chamber step in places where I never thought they would before, on committees where one wouldn't have thought that the chamber or our local businesses could change, and you have done that. Not only do you continue to bring all of us who have businesses and are members of the chamber into the fold. You do it really well. So my point is a question, favor, comment. I'd like to be kept informed on how you think we can help you as council. We are new to this role, and we may not be as inventive or creative as you might be, and I've seen your creativity. So if you have an idea how I can only speak for myself as a councillor, or we as a council can help you, please make sure you keep us abreast, because I know I'm personally invested in making sure we continue to go in the direction you're taking us. Thank you.
I'll keep showing up to meetings.
Great.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sally. Great to see you. Alrighty, moving along to the consideration of reports. The Grand River Conservation Authority regarding Lake Erie Region Source Protection Committee municipal member nomination. No, just the recommendation? All right. So the recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington approve the appointment of John Sepulus as the municipal representative for the geographic area of Grey, Dufferin, Wellington, and Halton to the Lake Erie Source Protection Committee for the 2022 to 2026 term. That's correct? Okay. So motion for that? What?
Yep, a mover and a seconder.
Can I have a mover? Councillor Welton, seconder? Councillor Addams, all in favor? Oh, sorry. Before we go to vote, Councillor Wilton?
I was just curious if we know who John Sepulus is and what the relationship is. Does he report back to council at certain points in his appointment, or how does that work?
I said this would be an easy one.
Yeah, it was supposed to be just an easy, quick report. No problem. Thanks, Colin.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and through Deputy Mayor Jefferson. So John Sepulus, or Councillor John Sepulus, he's a councillor with the Township of Puslinch. So this would be his second term on the Source Protection Committee. So, and usually he's not coming to council with updates, but if there's, you know, Kyle obviously is plugged into source protection and the work of the committee. Kyle's usually the one providing updates on kind of what things that affect Center Wellington here. So.
Councillor McDonald?
Through you, Jefferson, to probably Colin. I guess when I first read this, I thought we would have discussion about the appointment, and was there an opportunity for Center Wellington councillor to put their name in? But it seems it's already decided and it's coming to us for information, and we're just going to agree with it. However, I'm just not understanding how we got to this point, and we're just receiving it, stamping it, and that's about it. And I guess he won't be giving us updates. And is this a paid position?
Well, I can speak to part of that. I think we did receive the letter from the Grand River Conservation Authority indicating that he would be up for nomination again, given his past service. I believe the Township of Wellington North has already selected their individual, and the Township of Puslinch has confirmed Councillor Sepulus as well. So it's not that it's a done deal per se, but I think the area municipalities that are involved in this on this committee have started the ball and have already, Puslinch has already nominated and put his name forward. So we are following suit in that there was simply following suit with the Township of Puslinch. I don't know whether it's a paid position or not. Does it say paid? travel. Okay, so it does look like it is a per diem and reimbursement for mileage.
Anything further, Councillor McDonald?
Do we know what the per diem is? Or does it just say per diem? Sorry.
It just says a per diem. It doesn't give the amount.
Nothing further? Mayor Waters?
I know historically we've had positions like this. I remember even back in terms of my early years in council, we had local folks on this before. So was not aware of when this was coming up, and was not made aware at Grand River about this, the timing of this. So it's nothing that I knew prior to this coming to this council. So this is the first I've seen of this. So. But what may help, I don't know if it'll be for this one, but can get a better understanding from the Grand River in terms of how these appointments roll out, that type of thing. I could get some additional information. Was it, just a question, was it critical in terms of us passing this on? Was there a timing on this?
There is timing. We have until Friday, April the 28th, but we also could ask for a report from Kyle. Kyle and I discussed it, and we thought we would just put the letter on, that it was self-explanatory, but Kyle did offer to do a report, and we had agreed that we would just put this on in the interests of time. But he would do a full report if council would prefer that route. He was more than happy to. We just went this route to in lieu, so, but he is prepared to do a full report.
Councillor Evoy?
Thank you, through you, Madam Deputy. I guess for me, I have no reason to question this appointment, but I think moving forward, and I'm not sure what the policy is or has been, but I wonder if when appointments like this come up that do represent us, that we have an opportunity to speak to it, and that we don't land this on the staff to have to do all the time. That is part of, I think, why we're here, is to help make some of these decisions, and if we can alleviate some of the effort off the staff's plate, then I'd like to see us do that. It also keeps us abreast of what is happening around us, what committees are representing us that we may not know about, because we don't know about any of these as new councillors. I don't know a lot of these, so I would love to hear what's coming up, not necessarily change how it goes forward, but I'd just love to learn more about it as it's coming forward. Does that make sense?
Are we getting the feel that we should defer for a report, have it come to the next, would it be the next committee of the whole? When's our date? April? End of April?
Yeah, we could do it.
Will we have time before the 28th? 17th, I think.
At the end of March?
Okay, yeah, either or. We'll just
See where it fits best, if that's okay?
see where he can get it done in time.
All right, do we need a motion for that?
We need
or-
a motion to defer.
Okay, can I have a motion to defer? Do I have to read the recommendation?
Are we just gonna motion to defer the
And then just
appointment? Yeah. we
Do
can-
the recommendation?
Yeah.
Okay. Do I need to reread that then, to be in?
No, what I'm, is the motion to defer where we're going? Okay.
Yeah.
Then I would, what you're going to do is council will defer the appointment of the municipal representative for the geographic area of Gray, Dufferin, Wellington, and Halton to the Lake Erie Source Protection Committee for a report from staff.
To motion that? Councillor Wilton. Seconder, Councillor McDonald. And then everybody, all in favor? Or discussion? Would you like discussion? Oh, no, sorry. You're okay? All right. All in favor? Okay, so that's carried. Moving along, holding zone removal. Mariana?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Deputy Mayor Jefferson and members of council. The report before you is regarding a holding zone removal, and the property is 6523 Wellington Road 7. It's the Elora Mill redevelopment site on the south side of the river. And the one site in particular that this pertains to is the Walser building ruin. And that is, you probably all be familiar with it, the ruin that's just at the side of the river by the bridge, and it has a large chimney stack associated with it. So the site is actually zoned C1, so Central Business District Commercial with a holding provision, H12. And the holding provision is used as a way to stop development or limit development from proceeding until certain conditions are met. And in this case, the holding zone was put on so that, similar to the ones adjacent to it on the same property, to limit redevelopment until heritage impact assessment and conservation plan are prepared. And the second condition is that a site plan approval and agreement are registered and, are entered into. And the other matter here is that, and it's mentioned in the report, for exterior design. So there was an intent to pass a bylaw for interior design. However, with Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act, we can no longer require review of exterior design. So basically, the first part of that condition or the requirements was fulfilled back in August when the Heritage Committee recommended endorsement and approval of the Heritage Impact Assessment, and Council also endorsed it in August. And then, so we're now past the second part, or have fulfilled those requirements in terms of site plan approval has been granted as delegated to staff, and the site plan agreement has now been executed. So now that all of the conditions have been fulfilled, we feel it's appropriate to lift the holding provision so that the development can proceed and a building permit can be applied for. And I know the applicant is also here in case there are any questions, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Nothing? Councillor McDonald?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Jefferson. I just have one question. So we're lifting this and we know what is going to be done with it, but I'm not seeing a drawing of what's going to be done with it. Like, yeah.
Okay, sorry, yes. I don't know if we'd want to try to put it on the screen, but the drawings are available on the website. All the plans are there, and I can also send them to you if you need. Sorry, and next time I will include a drawing if that's more helpful.
Yeah, just for, like,
Yes.
of course I did my own research, and so,
Right.
yeah, I did, but part and parcel as a package, I don't know if that has been the status quo in the past, but going forward, I think it is easier for us to say, okay, yeah, we're lifting this, and this is what's going to be put in its place. And so for the public, when they're looking at the documents too, it's all, they don't have to go looking all over our website too. So that's just
Yes,
my
point
thoughts,
taken,
my
my apologies.
request.
Yes.
That's okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mayor Waters?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is more just a comment. I was on council back in the day when we supported to keep that building, And there were some councillors at that time that were looking to push it down. And it's nice to hear that we're at the stage in here, and there were a few of us at that it's decided to help preserve that building, and it's nice to see that this is finally moving forward, because it's been a long time. Anyways, thank you.
If I can also just add something, and I should have described this, it's being repurposed for restaurant use on the main floor, and then hotel rooms above, so 8 hotel rooms. And I apologize for my oversight in mentioning that. Anything else? No? Okay, thank you. So there's a recommendation there that the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington approve application HZ01-2023 to remove a holding zone symbol and give 3 readings to the corresponding bylaw. Can I have somebody make a motion? Councillor McDonald, and a seconder? Councillor Adams? And any discussion to that? Not seeing any. We can put that to a vote. All in favor? And that's everybody, so that's carried. That's great. Thank you. So next is the Stormwater Management Master Plan, Notice of Study Commencement Report.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Deputy Mayor and Council. My name is Ryan Maiden. I'm the Water Wastewater Project Manager with the Engineering Department, and I'm the project lead on the Stormwater Management Master Plan. The purpose of this report is it's the first in the Township's history, and it will provide an understanding of how the existing stormwater management network is functioning, identify capacity constraints, evaluate opportunities to improve water quality, and inform short and long-range planning to improve its stormwater infrastructure. The plan will also provide a preferred strategy to address growth to 2051 within the urban area, while taking into consideration climate change, erosion control, and groundwater and surface water quality and quantities. Township staff will provide updates to Council at PIC number 1 while developing suitable alternatives, at PIC number 2 when developing a preferred strategy, and when the final report is complete. The anticipated project completion is in Q1 of 2024, and this notice of study commencement that is included as an attachment here is being posted in the Wellington Advertiser and will be up on the CW Connect CW webpage this Thursday, March 16th. Yeah, thank you. Any questions?
Councillor Wilton?
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate the presentation. Just curious, as you go through this study, how much you can look at kind of like elevating best practices for stormwater management. So kind of looking at multi-purpose stormwater management ponds that bring human recreation and like passive use of the stormwater management ponds, and also enhanced habitat opportunities and anything like that. So just looking for some your thoughts on that.
So that's kind of one of the tasks underneath this program is to look at innovation when it comes to stormwater management. So when we're going through and coming up with preferred alternatives or strategies, that's definitely one of the aspects we will be looking at.
I'd like Centre Wellington to be like showcased at future AMO and Roma conferences for best management practices on this. So all the best with the study.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Nothing? Okay, great, thanks.
Great, thank you.
So we have a recommendation that the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington receives for information report number 1S 2023-07, Stormwater Management Master Plan, Notice of Municipal Class Environmental Assessment Study Commencement. Can I have somebody make that motion? Councillor Wilton, seconder Councillor Adams. Any discussion for that? No? Put it to a vote. All in favor? That's great, and that's carried, everybody. Alrighty. So 8.4, bylaw to restrict the weight of vehicles passing over certain bridges in the Township of Centre Wellington.
Yes, hi, Deputy Mayor Jefferson, Council. So you get Adam Gilmore, not Dickieson, here. This is the other Adam on the engineering team, and Adam McNabb, of course. So so happy to be here today to speak to this report briefly here. But Bridge 29WG, also referred to as the Living Springs Bridge, is a bowstring arch bridge built in the early 1900s, located on Side Road 15 between First and Second Line in former West Garifraxa Township. This bridge did have a 15-ton load limit restriction imposed on it. And we had some meetings with representatives from the agricultural community and the residents out that way who expressed, some concern over the 15-ton posting and that limiting their ability to achieve their agricultural operations and goals. So staff took that away. We worked with our bridge engineering consultants to do a technical assessment of the bridge to see if we could do something referred to as a multiple unit posting. So this is where you have, for example, a tractor pulling a trailer. It wouldn't, the combined weight of the tractor and trailer could exceed the 15-ton limit, recognizing that they're not all going to be on the bridge at the same time. So we did that technical review, and it was determined that we could have a multiple load posting in this case for a tractor and 1 unit, and a tractor and 2 units. So the bridge engineering consultants determined this could safely be implemented, and we are recommending that we implement this multiple unit load posting, and this revised load limit bylaw would legally implement that that revised posting. We feel like this outcome is going to give the agricultural operators a lot more flexibility in that area. Thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions you have.
Councillor Evoy.
Through you, Madam Deputy. First of all, I didn't know it was tone. I thought it was ton, so I learned something new already. And second of all, it would seem to me like it's an absolute obvious next step for us. And will we incorporate this throughout, or just in certain areas that you're, bridges that you're speaking to today?
Yes, thanks for the question, Councillor Evoy. So through the Deputy Mayor, so this isn't something we're looking at doing widespread across the township. It takes quite a bit of effort to do this type of assessment to determine if a bridge is suitable to have a multiple unit posting. There's engineers evaluation, technical analysis involved. So I think our approach is that we're kind of looking at it as the opportunities arise. And this was a bit of a special case.
Follow up, Madam Deputy. Thank you, through you. So just to confirm then, should the situation arise, again, I'm learning lots about our ag world. So we are not presenting a problem for any of our farming community by not having this across the board, just to confirm?
Yes, thank you for the question again through the Deputy Mayor. So we're not aware of any other similar issues at this time. And if we were to become aware of such issues, it's certainly something we could repeat in other areas.
Thank you for clarifying.
Other questions for Adam? Councillor Wilton.
Not a question, just a comment. So thank you very much for your responsiveness to the needs of the ag sector. So I think that's important that we do. So appreciate that.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Adam. There's a recommendation before us that the council, that the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington adopt a bylaw to restrict the weight of vehicles passing over certain bridges in the Township of Centre Wellington, as outlined in report number IS 2023-04. Can I have somebody make a motion for that? Councillor Eboy, and a seconder? Councillor Wilton, and then discussion? None seen? Okay, then we can put it to a vote. And all in favor? And that's all of us, so that's carried. All right. So moving along, 8.5, the proposed collaboration with Biodiffusion Technologies, Inc. for innovative road construction project. Looks like Adam's with us again.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. So 8th line west from Wellington Road 18 to Side Road 5 is a road segment that's in generally poor condition. The pavement is deteriorated to quite a poor condition. There's a lot of heavy truck traffic on this segment from quarry operators in the area. And historical investigation of this road and the pattern of failure that's been observed would suggest that it's not just the pavement that's failing, it's the base of the road. And this is attributed to it being, the base being aged, or in some cases not of suitable material. There might be some topsoil material and other materials that are not suitable for a road base in this area based on the investigation. So the township last year collaborated on a relatively small scale on a pilot program with this company, Biodiffusion Technologies, to trial a product that they've developed. It's a bio-resin, so it's a derivative from forest products. So it's a natural resin material. And when applied to gravel surfaces, it dries and hardens and has the ability to harden the gravel surface. So the township did some trial work with this company last year with some really positive results, demonstrated that it could achieve that goal of hardening gravel. We've been in discussion with them to further that collaboration a little bit and have them become involved in this 8th line pavement project, which is scheduled for this year. So we're proposing that they'll apply this technology in a 300-meter segment of the road to see if it is capable of hardening the road base. And then we will repave the road and we'll monitor how that technology performs over time. So there's some clear advantages if we can demonstrate that we can scale this up and that it works. One of them being, compared to having to excavate the entire road base and replace it, there's a lot less in haulage, so less greenhouse gas emissions. Less expensive in that we don't have to be removing and then purchasing all of that aggregate material to replace it. So there are definitely some advantages for the township here, and we are proposing this collaboration through this project. So the recommendation is that that council considers endorsing this collaboration and that they delegate authority to the Managing Director of Infrastructure Services to negotiate a memorandum of understanding with Biodiffusion Technologies to formalize the terms and conditions of the collaboration. So that's everything. Happy to answer any questions.
Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Deputy Jefferson, I'm pretty excited to see how this product works. So I'm definitely going to be positive about my response. I guess what I'm asking is, so we've done this on a road currently, we've tested it. And sorry, which road did we do? Do you know?
Yeah, thank you, Colin. Yeah,
Sorry.
so it was the 3rd line.
It was, okay.
Yes, and it was a relatively short segment of road that we trialed it on last year, gravel road. And so we applied the resin and we had township forces out with equipment grading and compacting the resin applied surface. And yes, it demonstrated that it hardened nicely and formed, you think of a gravel surface as being kind of a loose surface. It actually creates, a firm surface that resembles, or at least that it texturally feels like pavement.
Okay. Yeah, this is exciting. And I just asked that once this proceeds, I'd like to go out and look at it on 8th line because you drive down that road now, you're at your own risk. So I'm anxious to see how it turns out. Thank you.
Okay. Questions? Councillor Adams.
Through you, Deputy Chair. So I'm just curious, like the initial cost in construction, how that would differ from like your standard asphalt project.
Yeah, so looking at it in terms of, if we were to reconstruct this road in a conventional way, so we were to excavate all of the granular material, replace it all, and then pave it, don't know exactly, but I would guess that this technology would probably be in the order of like 1/10 perhaps of the cost of constructing a road in a conventional way like that.
Another question, Councillor Adams.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Is there, I'm assuming they're working with other municipalities as well. Is there other kind of longer piloted projects out there, like in neighboring municipalities where this has been successful and they've implemented? Would it still be kind of just used in particular scenarios then? Or would this be something that could potentially have like a long-term alternative, like for replacement?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Adams. So through the Deputy Mayor, so yes, they are working with other municipalities. They're also working with the private sector a little bit. They've done some trials in quarries, the Milton Quarry being a big one. It's one of the biggest quarries, I think, in Canada. And so they've looked at applying the material within the quarry yard and seeing how it performs with the heavy truck traffic moving over it. So, yeah, so I think that it's a developing technology, and they're still, the sky is kind of the limit as far, when you speak to them. I think they're thinking of different ways they could use this and apply this, but this is one that we think is really promising and that we felt like, could really have some benefit to the township and on future projects potentially.
Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you, Madam Deputy. Just curious, is there a guarantee?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Evoy, and through the Deputy Mayor, great question. So we are negotiating the terms of the agreement, and that is an item for discussion with BDT. As it stands currently, I think there's some reluctance to provide a guarantee, and we're approaching this as more of a trial kind of pilot application, and hence why we've kind of constrained the length of application to about 300 meters.
If I may, through you, follow through, can you confirm what that cost would be to us for that 300 meters? And how long will you watch it for until you determine that it is or isn't successful?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Evoy, through the Deputy Mayor. So the cost estimate that was provided by BDT is $24,400, and that's inclusive of non-rebate HST. That's for the cost of the resin itself, plus a little bit of time for one of their engineers who's going to be directing the project to be on site. Also, they're going to be collaborating with a local construction company that's actually going to be grinding up the existing pavement. The remainder of the work is proposed to be done by township forces and with township equipment. And so that's the cost estimate that's been provided. And my apologies, there was a second part of your question that I haven't answered.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, just how long are you going to watch it for before you determine its success?
Right, thank you. So we're going to do some trials right after we do it. They have a piece of equipment that can actually measure how much the pavement deflects when a vehicle drives over it. So they're proposing to do that right after it's applied, which will provide some information to how much it has stiffened the road. But really, the proof of the trial is going to come, I think, with longer term observations. We're going to have to see over time how the pavement wears. So I think that there will be some information that will come very early on that might point to it being potentially successful over the longer term, but we will have to observe it over the longer term, I think, to really demonstrate it.
And then hold off before we do too much more till we know, right?
Yeah, I think we'll just have to see.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions? Councillor Adams.
Through you, Deputy Chair. I just find this innovative stuff pretty interesting. I'm just kind of curious, the Clausen farms, they're the ones that like mix the two substances together in the natural. Is that like a somewhat local southwestern farm?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Adams. Through the Deputy Mayor, very much so. Yes, they're a local farm contracting company.
Any further questions? No? Okay, thank you, Adam. So the recommendation before us is that the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington endorses the proposed collaboration with Biodiffusion Technologies, Inc. for the repaving of 8th Line West, Wellington Road 18 to Side Road 5, as outlined in report number IS 2023-06. And that Township Council delegates authority to the Managing Director of Infrastructure Services for authorization of a memorandum of understanding between the Township and Biodiffusion Technologies, Inc. to define the terms and conditions of the proposed collaboration described in report number IS 2023-06. Can I have somebody make that motion? Councillor Wilton. Seconder? Councillor Adams. Any discussion? Okay, none seen. We can put that to a vote. And all in favor? And that's everybody, so that's carried. Looking at item 8.6, Sean's declared conflict, so we'll just let him. Yay.
All right.
So
okay.
the new Township Operations Center project update?
Yes, yeah.
Thanks, Colin.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Jefferson and members of the council. We're very pleased to be here today to present an update on the Township Operations Center project. Engineering staff and the project team have been preparing the necessary studies and refining preliminary site layout designs to support the rezoning and site plan approvals for the new facility. Today's presentation will be a joint effort among our Manager of Engineering, Adam Gilmore, Manager and Director of Corporate Services, Adam McNabb, and also CAO Dan Wilson. We also have members of the senior management team, Rashid, Brett, Pat, Bruce as well, to answer any questions that council may have. And we have a fairly detailed, maybe someone say lengthy presentation, so if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer those at the end of the presentation. And so the objectives of the report today is really to provide a comprehensive project update to council, and including the results of the various technical studies and refinements to the conceptual layout of the site, and to seek committee direction on the two conceptual options presented for the building layout and administration area. So we can go to the next slide. Or do I have the control for the next slide? Oh man, it's been a while since I've been up here, so this is great. Anyway, the next slide, I'll just explain it. So yeah, it's essentially a project, or sorry, the presentation outline, where we have the we'll provide a bit of the project background, an overview of the space needs assessment study findings from 2021, the site selection process we went through to come up with the 965 Gartshore site, an overview of the site development studies, and site development conceptual options. We've got a few slides on sustainability and green building opportunities, and then also the next steps of the project. And so just, the Operations Center, just again, kind of backing up big picture, why does the township need a new Operations Center, right? So I just want to highlight the kind of the key salient points of that. So obviously the township's growing, and current facilities aren't sufficient to allow the township to provide the essential services to our growing population. Our current facilities do not comply with AODA legislation from an accessibility standpoint. Hey, there we go, thank you. And do not provide a high quality working environment to attract and retain staff. Current facilities are insufficient to accommodate vehicle equipment and material requirements as identified in the space needs study. And as council will recall from we did the facility tours last November, you'll recall seeing the overcrowding, the very full garage bays in our locations, utility and storage closets kind of converted into office space. We have a temporary trailer as a lunchroom at the water shop on Queen Street. So we're looking for opportunities where we can consolidate facilities, and the new facility will be designed with a more customer-friendly kind of one-window approach to customer service. Okay, there we go. And also we're looking at combining parks, public works, engineering, IT, and water services to contribute to cross-departmental efficiencies and a more collaborative work environment among departments. So just to go back, and just a few visuals there of things I was describing. Just in terms of timeline, I know we started this timeline in 2019, but it's been a long journey to get to this point. The first report on this topic was written in 2004. So There's kind of a post-amalgamation, if you can picture all the, amalgamated communities coming together, each one with its own kind of historic legacy facilities, whether they be office areas or garages. And so essentially, we were looking at 6 facilities at that point and bringing them into one location. That was kind of the idea back in 2004. In 2019, the strategic plan for the previous term of council stated that the township will open a new operations facility, which we, gave staff direction to start, looking at, okay, what does that mean? What does that look like? How does that integrate with our existing facilities? Does the model from 2004 of one facility make sense, or should we go a more distributed model and realize some efficiencies? So Adam will speak to that a bit more in some subsequent slides. In 2020, the township completed a detailed evaluation of 8 options and essentially came up with a space needs assessment. So council endorsed option 6, which was build a new operations center on a new site in 2 phases. So out of the 8 options considered, option 6 was selected as the preferred option. And then from there, also in 2021, was the purchase of the 965 Gart Shore site. So it was a 20-acre parcel off the larger tract of land, and the township purchased a section, a rectangular portion parallel to Gart Shore Street. And so in 2022, the township retained the services of an architectural firm, RDH, as well as RJ Burnside, to provide the site surveys, studies, investigation, reports, conceptual designs for the operations center. And so this is the work we're bringing forward this afternoon. So we'll hear about the results of the studies, the assessments, and we'll also just kind of kick off the rezoning process as well today, and just give you some insights into what we'll be bringing forward as part of our rezoning application. And just for council's information, the rezoning also includes some lands that are just across Gart Shore from the Operations Center property. So 101 Gregson Court and 970 Gart Shore Street are currently in a kind of future development or FD zone. And through this process, we're looking at rezoning those for an M2 industrial zone. All right. So just a couple of comments on the space needs assessment study. So like I mentioned, 8 options were considered as part of the evaluation. Kind of our standard, this is in the environmental assessment guidance, we look at a do-nothing option, so that's option 1. Renovation or expansion of existing facilities. We looked at obviously combining operations center with the County of Wellington too, so see if there was opportunities to co-locate with, as we've seen in other municipalities around us that have gone that route. Build a new operations center on township-owned property, and then we looked at also building a new operations center on a new site, and kind of looked at different phasing of how we could do that. So just a couple comments on co-locating with the county. So back when we did this work, we had some discussions with the county about the opportunity to co-locate. So this would have been in 2021. And the feedback from the county was at that time that their Elora garage, they had no plans in their 10-year forecast to replace their Elora garage. And they don't have any other garages planned for Center Wellington within the next 15 years. So that was in 2021. We're in 2023. I did reach out to the county about a month ago, and just to confirm that was still the case, and that is still their position. So no plans within their 10-year forecast for any for the replacement of the Elora garage. I believe they are looking at maybe expanding a bay or two on the Elora garage, but there are no plans to replace it at this time. So, so at this stage, I'm going to hand things over to Adam, and he's going to kind of walk through the next number of slides. New chairs. Okay, there we go. There we go. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much, Colin. So just to pick this up here, so space needs assessment. The preferred option was to build a new operations center on a centrally located 20-acre site in two construction phases. This option had the highest overall score of all options considered. The phase 1 capital cost was estimated to be $16.4 million, including the purchase of land and soft costs, including design and permitting. And the phase 2 cost $10.6 million, a total estimated capital cost of approximately $27 million. The facility will provide space for multiple departments, divisions to work together and share resources. The divisions and departments considered through the space needs assessment were Public Works, Environmental Services, Engineering, Source Water Protection, Parks, Forestry, IT, and Records Storage Archives. And this option was endorsed by Township Council in June of 2021. See if it works for me. Okay. Oh, right arrow, thank you. Oh, no. Okay, here we go. Great. Okay. So the phase building approach that I mentioned, so the phase 1 would really address the immediate needs for space, including the full administration building, heated and unheated garage bays, exterior works yard, vehicle wash bay, material storage, and a greenhouse. And phase 2, which would be constructed in the 10-ish year time frame, would include garage additions, an enclosed salt storage and loading facility, an additional greenhouse, and an additional training meeting room to be added to the administration building. So some of the benefits to the community. So it builds capacity for continued delivery of services, and really that's the goal here, is providing exceptional services to our residents and businesses. And with a growing population comes a need for growing staff to supply those services. It would improve the efficiency of operations and avoid service interruptions. It would provide a convenient one-window facility for public inquiries, and would create an accessible building, so a building that is compliant with AODA standards, for example. So the site location, so staff, following council endorsement of the preferred option in 2021, staff set out to look for sites for the operations center. There's a long list of sites that were developed, and this long list of sites were subjected to a screening evaluation to determine, does it meet our kind of base needs here, and could it potentially work as a site for the facility. And through that screening process, the list was whittled down to 4 potential sites. Those 4 sites were subjected to a detailed evaluation, and the conclusion of that evaluation was that the site at 965 Gartshore Street was the preferred site for the new operations center. So when you look at it on a map, one of the key criteria for the site was we wanted it to be located close to the urban population center. We wanted it to be centrally located within the township. And we wanted to be able to have this continued east-west presence across the township. So you can see here the site at 965 Gartshore is, located in Fergus, so in a great position close to the urban population center, and also centrally located within the township. And then the plan would be to maintain the Elora Works Garage and the West Garifraxa Works Garage, so that we do kind of have this east-west axis across the township that you can see in the map here. Some other advantages of the site is that it's generally flat, so that reduces the complexity of the development, reduces earthworks costs, makes it generally cheaper to build the facility. It's close to and compatible with the existing industrial area of the Fergus Business Park, so from a land use perspective, it's compatible. It satisfied the requirement of 20 acres. And I already mentioned kind of the proximity to the urban population center. So in October of 2021, Township Council approved the purchase of this property. And here's the property on a map. located on Garchor Street. And it is currently a farm and has been used historically as a farm. There is a farmhouse, barns, other ancillary buildings, and crop fields on the site currently. And this is what it looks like. So I'm going to circle back later in the presentation just on some of the heritage considerations related to the existing farmhouse and the barn, and some opportunities associated with those features on site that we can consider during the development. Okay. Yeah, so now on to the site development study. So this is what we're here to update council on, is the study that we've kicked off. We kicked off in 2022, and that we're very much in the midst of right now. And so it was initiated May 2022. It was through a competitive RFP process. Project was awarded, Colin already mentioned, to RDH and Burnside, in addition to a bunch of other sub-consultants. It's very much a multidisciplinary study and incorporating a lot of different considerations for the land development. It is needed to complete the required rezoning, surveys, studies, and the development of concept options. So I'm going to go through at a high level here, some of the key components of the work and some of the preliminary findings. So in terms of heritage, so the farmhouse, barn, and the laneways have heritage value. And a more detailed assessment, referred to as a heritage impact assessment, is underway to establish options for preserving those heritage features. Some examples that make a lot of sense: reuse of the farmhouse. The farmhouse is in great condition. It could be put to some type of beneficial reuse. Other materials on site, so the barn, for instance, a lot of the materials from the barn could potentially be reused in the construction of the new facility. We can have some commemoration features, plaques, storyboards that we could feature in the new facility that pay tribute to the heritage and history of that property. And here's some more pictures showing the farmhouse, the inside of the barn, and the laneways. So some of the environmental findings. So the site is located adjacent to one of our municipal wells, Fergus Well F6. And because of that, it's located within wellhead protection areas for that well. And of significance is that the wellhead protection area A, which is a 100-meter radius around the well, which is kind of the most protective area around the well, is located within the 965 site. So some of the things we're proposing on doing, and I'm going to circle back to source water protection in more detail later, but is to keep this all as green space within that wellhead protection area A, to limit any activities that could result in risk to the groundwater and the municipal drinking water, to not have any of those activities occurring within that area. From a species at risk perspective, there were no species or endangered species at risk identified on site. However, there is potential habitat for those species, so there have been mitigation measures recommended. So it's recommended that prior to doing any type of demolition or removals on site, we do a detailed survey to confirm that there are none of those species present, and that we do any work outside of nesting windows for birds and things of that nature. So two of the species that were noted as having potential habitat on site, the red-headed woodpecker and bats. So we feel that those items can all be mitigated through the planning and construction of the facility. Trees. There's a diverse arbor of mature trees located in the southwest corner of the site. And so through our conceptual design, you'll see we can preserve a lot of those trees and mitigate tree removals in that area, try and maintain those trees. Archaeological findings. So we did a stage 1 archaeological assessment, and this is mainly a desktop assessment of archaeological potential. And it was determined that there are areas of archaeological potential on site, and these are mainly undisturbed or minimally disturbed areas like the fields, and areas that have not been excavated in the past. So a stage 2 archaeological assessment was recommended, and the township is proposing to carry that out this summer outside of this study as follow-up prior to the detailed design stage of the project. Traffic impacts, great news, there are none. So, or at least none that we have to mitigate or plan for in terms of capital improvements. There are some minor impacts to the Highway 6 Gordon Street intersection that can be mitigated through signal programming. Noise study findings. So the site will generate noise at a level that's above the threshold that's where it needs to be regulated. So we're proposing to have an earth berm constructed along the entire western boundary of the site to mitigate noise going off site. So that will suffice currently. If in the future at some point those lands were to develop as residential, for example, there might be additional noise mitigation required at that time, and that can be implemented in the form of a wall on top of the berm. But that can be constructed and investigated later. So now getting into the conceptual design and a few options that staff have identified. So through this process, we have noted that, like other departments of the township, the planning and development department is growing, and that growth pressure comes from growth in the township and also from provincial planning legislation and some noteworthy recent developments in that regard. And that's placing pressure on existing administration facilities. So there is an opportunity that we felt should be investigated to include the planning and staff from planning and development in the new operations center. So we've created two conceptual options. The first is just based purely on the 2021 space needs assessment. So those are all the original assumptions. And the second being all the staff considered through the space needs assessment plus staff from the planning and development department. And that's current staff and projected staff out to the 2041 timeframe. So it addresses current needs and future needs. So this is the conceptual site plan. So I'll walk you through this. So we have the administration building located on the right of the map with an adjacent staff and public parking area. This part of the site is accessed through a driveway that is separate from driveways leading to the operational areas of the site. So this is for safety and efficiency of operations. We want to have the operations area restricted to operations staff, operations vehicles, and the administration area available to the public. Other areas like the greenhouse here you can see would also have public access, but the main kind of works yard would be gated and accessible only to municipal operations vehicles and staff. Outdoor amenity space has been included next to the administration building. The existing farmhouse would be maintained for beneficial reuse. A new greenhouse and outdoor nursery space is located next to the farmhouse. The garages you can see attached to the administration building, forming that L-shaped to the building. A covered vehicle storage area is included next to the garages, and material storage areas and a storm pond are located on the left of this plan. The entire wellhead protection area A, so that's the blue circle, for well F6 will be maintained as green space. And features to be added during phase 2 are shaded in gray. So we have a future addition to the garages, future salt storage and loading facility, and an additional greenhouse. Traffic in the works yard, I mentioned this, will be isolated, and we've also even looked at kind of the flow of traffic within the works yard. And this was a recommendation of the architect, which is kind of a neat one that wouldn't really occur to you, but most of the turning movements would be towards the left so that operators of heavy equipment have better lines of sight when they're turning that way. So there are a number of safety features incorporated just into the way the site has been laid out. So this is conceptual option 2. You'll note that it's essentially identical to option 1, with the exception being that we've added about 20 800 square feet of space onto the administration building, and this would be for planning and development staff to accommodate them. We've also expanded the parking area to include an additional 25 spaces to accommodate the additional staff plus visitors and that kind of come, with additional staff. And this is a conceptual rendering of option 2. So just want to stress right now, still very conceptual in terms of how the building looks. There's a lot of room. There's a lot of work to be done there during the detailed design in terms of the style of the building and some of the specific building features. But this gives you a good idea of the footprint on site and generally what it's going to look like. So it's a one-story administration building. We have, as I mentioned, this outdoor amenity space, maintaining the farmhouse, and then you can see the works yard in the back. And then at ground level, this is another rendering of what it could look like. So considering the two options and the opportunities and constraints associated with each option, staff are recommending that council consider endorsing option 2, adding planning and development staff to the new operations center. This option will create space flexibility in other facilities, including the Civic Center, where planning and development staff reside currently, and the high-level incremental cost associated with this option. So incremental cost meaning it's the cost kind of above option 1 or in addition to option 1 is estimated to be approximately $1.54 million. And I will turn it over to our Managing Director of Corporate Services to go through the financial analysis. So thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Adam, and good afternoon, Deputy Mayor Jefferson, members of council. In terms of the financing strategy for the Phase 1 works, the remaining costs inclusive of option 2 recommendation of adding the additional office space and parking spaces anticipated to be $13.99 million over the next 3 years. This includes estimates for soft costs and excludes land purchase, as has already transpired with the acquisition of the property at 965 Gartshore. Constructing the new operations facility space is identified in the township's existing development charges background study, and it is estimated that the Phase 1 cost will be 93% growth related or recoverable through development charges revenues. Given the significance of the capital outlay, growth related debt would be required to fund the construction, with future principal and interest payments to be funded from development charge revenues. The non-growth related component of this facility, or the residual 7% for Phase 1, is expected to be funded through a combination of sale surplus of land and buildings, which are currently owned by the township, and contributions from the township's Building Code Reserve Fund. With this strategy, the cost of constructing this facility would not impact taxation or water or wastewater rates. And once built, the operations center will form a new cost center in the township's operating budget, with operational costs to be funded from taxation and water and wastewater rates annually and offset by the disposition of the other existing cost centers as we have present day. Given the construction costs for the operations center are not expected to have an impact on taxation or water or wastewater rates, it is important to consider that the impact will have on debt levels and development charge cash flows, which will continue to be monitored as part of the annual budgeting process. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam and Adam. So looking at the existing township facility space and lands and what the proposed plans are there, staff put a considerable amount of thought into existing facilities that township are using and what do those look like long term. And as township is aware, we're anticipated to grow significantly over the next 20 years. So that includes an addition of a staff complement to ensure that we continue to provide services at the appropriate level. And as the team has announced, the Operations Center is being built to accommodate growth to 2041. So the question we kept asking ourselves at a staff level is, what do we do to accommodate growth to 2041 in our other facilities, such as this building, for example, the Civic Center? We are at capacity or over capacity in the Civic Center right now. I think I alluded to that in a previous meeting. So one of the questions was, how do we address capacity issues at 1 McDonald Square? And is there a way to use the Operations Center construction to help alleviate that? We looked at 205 Queen Street, which is the former medical office behind the old Groves Memorial Community Hospital site. And we are using that temporarily now to house staff. But we are looking at that as a serious consideration for physician recruitment offices going forward. So taking into account that a good logical use of 205 Queen going forward is clinical space for doctors, and it is set up perfectly for that. And given that this building at 1 McDonald Square is significantly over capacity, the recommendation is to have the Planning and Development Department move from 1 McDonald Square to the Operations Center. And to clarify, I would say the only operational department we have that isn't moving to the Operations Center is the Planning and Development Department, other than recreation facilities, which obviously has to stay within the recreation facilities themselves. So we are suggesting that the Planning and Development staff move to the Operations Center, and that addresses long-term staff space concerns for this building. And 205 Queen will be addressed in a future report to council, but right now it's looking like a recommendation towards physician recruitment space, at least in the short term. We have land across the street from the proposed Operations Center, located at Gregson Court and Gartshore Street, 101 Gregson and 970 Gartshore. That land is going through the rezoning process as part of the Operations Center, and right now the current proposed use of that is to sell it. It is being zoned industrial, and we are proposing at this point anyway to be selling that as industrial, and that'll come forward to council at a future date for conversation on that. The 965 Gartshore farmhouse is shown on all the concept drawings. We have an opportunity to decide on the future use of that farmhouse. It can be office space, it can be community use space, it can be physician accommodation space, that we can have conversations on the future use of that farmhouse at a later date. But we are working that farmhouse into the design of the Operations Center. And then there are a few facilities that we know will want to sell as part of this, and that is the Fergus Public Works Garage, the Pilkington office, and the farmhouse at the Sportsplex. And this will obviously provide proceeds that will benefit the township from a revenue perspective, but also realization of operating efficiencies that can be budgeted that is directed towards the Operations Center. So lots going on there, lots to discuss, but I just wanted to make a case for the fact that the township staff have put a lot of effort into how to leverage the Operations Center to help with other facility space needs that we have going forward. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dan. So just to carry on here, so a zoning bylaw amendment application is required. So the site, under the county's official plan, the site is the site can be used as a community service facility, which we understand a municipal operations center qualifies as a community service facility. So no changes under the county's official plan are required. Under the township zoning bylaw, the site is currently zoned as agricultural, which does not permit a municipal operations center, so that's why the rezoning application is required. So Dan already mentioned just about the adjacent properties, 101 Gregson, 970 Gartshore. We're proposing to submit them all as one zoning bylaw amendment. So that would address those properties also and would essentially unlock approximately 6 acres of employment lands for development on those properties at the same time, which would be a benefit to the township. And a public meeting will be held related to the zoning bylaw amendment application sometime in this spring of 2023. So moving on now to just some of the considerations for the design of the facility. Now, these are things that we're not quite there yet at this stage in the project. They would be considered more during the detailed design stage, but we're already thinking this way, and we think there are many opportunities in this regard. So source water protection, I mentioned about the wellhead protection area A and the measures we're taking to protect that municipal well. So the conceptual design elements all conform to the source protection plan requirements. So from a regulatory perspective, everything meets those requirements. We've consulted with the county's risk management official, so Kyle Davis, through the conceptual design to obtain his input on some best management practices for the site. So the future salt facility, so storage of road salt can constitute what's referred to as a significant drinking water threat under the source protection legislation. So in order to mitigate that, we're proposing to have that facility be completely covered, so there'd be no outdoor storage of salt whatsoever. And also all loading of equipment would occur inside the facility. So these are measures to try and reduce the amount of salt that makes its way out to the environment. The storm pond on site, we're proposing to implement several engineering controls in the storm pond, so one of which being an oil grit separator that would remove oily or sediment from oily substances or sediment from runoff before it gets to the pond. The pond will also be lined with some type of low permeability material like clay, so that reduces the amount of water from in the pond that can infiltrate into groundwater. The pond outlet, swale, and even the ditches along Gart Shore, where the drainage ultimately goes to, we'd also propose to put some types of liners in those ditches also to reduce the potential of infiltration of water near the well. So sustainability, green building considerations, there are many things that can be done. Already mentioned the incorporation of recycled materials from existing structures on site, like the barn. Low impact development. Low impact development refers to this practice of trying to manage stormwater on site and trying to have as much rainwater as possible, clean rainwater, infiltrate and recharge groundwater, reduce the amount of stormwater runoff. So low impact development features like vegetated swales and infiltration galleries could be implemented at the site to improve groundwater recharge, and of course in a way that's protective of the wellhead protection areas and the municipal drinking water. Things like rooftop solar panels for power generation, electrical vehicle charging stations, green roofs and rainwater harvesting systems to reduce the amount of stormwater runoff and try and reuse water on site. Just continued here, the use of low flow touchless fixtures throughout washrooms, change rooms, kitchens to reduce water consumption, wastewater generation. Integration of smart technologies to automate building functions and optimize energy use. High efficiency control systems like HVAC, heating and cooling, to improve air quality and save energy, and other features like pollinator parks, perhaps community gardens that would increase the green space on site and utilize that green space. The facility could also be designated as a LEED facility, so that's the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, which is really the standard for green buildings. So there are different levels of LEED certification that can be achieved. It could also be something like a net zero facility classification could be considered, where most of the energy or all of the energy used by the site is actually generated on site, typically through renewable means. These types of features, obviously it's more of an upfront capital cost to implement these things, but the hope is that over the longer term they would result in operational savings, so that if you look at the life cycle cost, it's actually a lower life cycle cost to implement these things, in addition to being all the benefits to the environment and being a steward and leader in these regards. Transportation considerations. So we have provided for a multi-use path access to the site, And so we could try and connect the site to the township's trail and active transportation system. I already mentioned electrical vehicle charging stations. That could also be included on site, but we try to make it as accessible as possible through multimodal means, so driving, cycling, walking. So next steps for the project, we need to finalize the study we're working on right now, the site development study, and the conceptual plans. We will be preparing the zoning bylaw amendment application, and we'll have public consultation process of the meeting sometime this spring. We will aim to complete the site development study this summer and report back to Township Council with updates, further updates at that time, and the end of study conclusions. And then we're working towards initiating a detailed design for the project in the fall of this year. Okay, I think one more. So the report recommendations, I'll just read them. So that Council of Township of Center Wellington receives as information the update on the new Township Operations Center, and that the Council endorses conceptual design option 2 to include the Planning and Development Department in the new Township Operations Center. All right, thank you for coming along with us on that journey, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Adam. Councillor McDonald?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Jefferson. I look at county turning down for possibly the next 15 years, and I know at County Council they have been having conversations about a new operations center, which was voted down and opted to a very expensive parkade. So I just was looking at this as a win-win situation for both of us. It just made sense. So I'm very disappointed, but again, that comes back to how it's necessary for our county councillors to update us as councillors, especially me. I could use that information coming forward about the exact reasons why. Any plans on moving council to this building? Was that ever discussed?
Thank you for the question, and through the Deputy Mayor. We did have brief conversations about who would move to this site and who wouldn't. At this point, we thought it would be better to keep administrative staff and council in Elora at this location, and then move operations staff, including planning and development, to the operations center. But that's the short-term look. We could look at other options in terms of long-term if we had to.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking at the growth and in your drawing, was that a water tower I saw?
Yes, thanks, Councillor McDonald. Yes, that's one of the Fergus water towers that's located to the south of the site.
Okay, perfect. And in the overall plan of moving staff and staff wellness in the facility, have you thought about a fitness center for staff, or working with our community partners on doing that for staff? Because, you know, we're already having a hard time getting staff, and that is, I know in the industry that's a nice thing that other municipalities are doing. I don't know if you've had any conversations about that as well.
Yes, thanks again for the question, Councillor McDonald. So through the Deputy Mayor, so we've provided for like approximately 40% amenity space to go along with the office space, and the amenity space does take into consideration uses of that nature. So I think it's still, there's some flexibility through the detailed design in terms of how we use that amenity space, but that is something that could be considered.
And Celeste, I would like to see more conversation with county. I know you guys have tried, and it's just about their little facility here in Elora right now, but I'd still like to see that conversation continue through our process, if that's okay. That's my question.
Dan would like to provide clarification.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a point of clarification, from what I understand from the recent conversations at County Council, they were looking to move county administration to to a Boyne, not their operations center. I think what they were looking to do is take some or all of the staff that were located in Guelph and move them to a Boyne, and that was the resolution that, to look into that, was turned down. But I think even under that scenario, they were still maintaining their operations facilities where they are, such as the one in Elora, for example. So even if that resolution was not turned down, I think they were just speaking administration space and not operation space.
Thank you, Dan. Councillor Eboy?
Thank you, through you, Madam Deputy. I have a few. First of all, thank you so much for that presentation. You needn't thank us for going along on the journey. I'm absolutely grateful to you. You guys did a lot of work, and you made it really easy to understand, and I appreciate it. A couple of questions. First one, the space beside on Queen Street that is currently being used for paramedics, I believe, is there a reason, will they not be moving over as well? And this allows straight through fairly considerable size space if we joined both lots together. Has that been considered? Is that in discussion at all as we look forward? I haven't heard anything about it, but it would stand to reason that either with the hospital change and or the operations change, that they probably could be somewhere else.
Thank you, and through the Deputy Mayor, I have had brief conversations about that site with those involved, and Wellington Guelph paramedics are the ones that are using that site. And just for clarification, the township owns the land that site is on, but the building itself is I believe owned by the city of Guelph. So at this point anyway, I know they were looking at one point of consolidating paramedic space across the province. That has been put on hold from what I've understood, but it wouldn't be paramedics moving in with township operations, for example. It would be more of a provincial strategy where paramedics decides where they're going provincially within the province. And yes, we do own 205 Queen Street, the land that the paramedics are on, the Waterworks Operations Center,
park, yep.
And Confederation Park. So we do own quite a bit of land in that area, but yeah, no thoughts at this point that paramedics would be moving with us.
Okay, thank you. Next question, there was a bit about that. Next question is, who would actually be visiting this operations center? You speak about it being friendly to the public. Who is actually visiting this center, please?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Boyd, for the question through the Deputy Mayor. So it would be meetings that are operational in nature. So, at times we're doing projects and we have stakeholders that we're working with on projects, that whether that could be members of the public sometimes it's representatives from agencies, sometimes it might be representatives from other municipalities. So it is an operations facility. But that said, we like things like public meetings, that we host from time to time. We would have that space available to host those types of
Thank
events.
you.
You're welcome.
I heard you use the word customer service and how that would be better for the public, but it's not really customer service insofar as our people attending and coming to you, because they would still come here with their questions, right? For questions around, yeah, okay, that's good.
Yeah, sorry if I could add to my response.
Sure.
Through the Deputy Mayor. So I misspoke a little bit there in that, things like building permits and development applications, when we speak to, a one window facility, they can use that facility to actually attend and submit those types of applications or inquire about those types of applications. So my apologies. Yeah, that wasn't the presentation, but yes,
That's great.
There'd be a service counter for the public at that facility.
Amazing. I'm just going to acquiesce over there to my colleague before I continue, because it looks like you want to add something. No. Oh, you sure? Okay. So the next question is, how many staff are going to be housed at the operations center?
Yes, thank you for the question. Great question. I can tell you what the floor space of the facility is. I can't recall exactly the number of staff that are proposed to be there. That information is in the space needs assessment. I can tell you that through option 2, the planning and development department, we're proposing to include an additional 19 staff, which are currently in the planning and development department, and then this number goes up to 36 staff in the 41 timeframe, but I
Just
can't.
in that department.
Just in that department. I can't recall the total number of staff in the facility.
Great. It's good enough, though, that we have a big need. Okay, moving down, the report that, on the farm, barn, and laneways from Heritage, we can expect that time-wise when?
Yeah, so thank you for the question again. So we have to complete the Heritage Impact Assessment. That'll be part of the next update that we do when we're nearing the conclusion of the project. One of the outcomes that could happen through this is that, you know, there's a recommendation that the township considers designating, the farmhouse, for example, as a heritage property. That could be one of the recommendations. And then at which time, you know, the township could consider moving in that direction. I think we'll be able to provide a more definitive update and conclusions on heritage at the conclusion of the study.
Great, thank you. Just one or two more. You spoke about the environmental findings, and you said we will accommodate that with regards to habitat and any species at risk. Obviously, we will do that through the GRCA, or how are those decisions made about how that, and are we budgeted to accommodate those needs?
Yes, thanks for the question. Great question. So, you know, we're required by law to comply to all acts related to endangered species. At times, that's working with the GRCA. At times, that's working with the province. There's some overlapping jurisdiction there when it comes to the species at risk, and we'd be complying with all requirements that way and working with all agencies.
Great. My final comment, you addressed about trail and access and active transportation access. I also would hope that maybe we work closely with some hort groups or some the tree groups so that we can honor that green space in the best way. And to my colleague's earlier point about setting the stage from Center Wellington around certain items around environmental, agriculture, some of these items, I really would like to see us make a concentrated effort in that area. So appreciate your work. Thank you so much.
Councillor Adams.
Through you, Deputy Chair, I have a couple of questions, if that's okay. Seems to be the trend. I would say I was a little bit surprised in the second part of the recommendation. I know this has been a large capital project and, you know, it's being looked at very closely and it's been talked about for a while now, right? It costs money to upgrade these facilities, and I would say being in the facilities and having the tours, it's quite evident that like these facilities need to be upgraded. If you're coming and saying like you needed an additional bay or any of these other things with public works and the operations, I don't think I would have had any hesitation. I'm a little cautious in approving like another 1.5 million for $2,800 square feet of office space. For me, I don't know if I'm clear on exactly what buildings. There's a lot of other things happening with like the buildings that the municipality currently has and whether they will be sold off or whether they're not. And you know, there's other options, like obviously certain occupations, you know, need to be in the office to be working, but you know, certain occupations, like what about like hybrid work alternatives and things like that. So, and just going back to the basic question of the space needs assessment was completed not that long ago. Where was the thought that, was it thought at that time that P&D did have adequate space? Like with these numbers of the growth, like what was the expectation of staff at that time? And why wasn't it included initially?
Okay, thanks, Councillor Adams for the questions. So through the Deputy Mayor. So I think that some of the recent legislative changes in terms of the in the planning world have put perhaps new pressures on planning staff that didn't exist at that time. With respect to work from home and hybrid work situations. So work from home and hybrid work was considered during the space needs assessment. And I'm going to, in a second here, turn it over to our manager of HR to speak to work from home. But I think that the bottom line is that, you still have to provide for the space. Even in a hybrid work situation, there's some efficiencies that can happen with, in terms of sharing space. But I think, and I'll turn it over to Rashid, but I think, the trends we're seeing would suggest that we have to plan for that space. And perhaps Rashid, if you want to provide some additional comments. Thank you.
Absolutely. So good afternoon. It's a good question. Hybrid working from home. So we created a program in 2022 and launched it in March. The idea was that any arrangement of hybrid work from home, this is post-pandemic, and it should be beneficial to both parties. So the township should benefit and the staff member should benefit because of less visits to a building and commuting costs and all that stuff. So our major criteria when we wrote that program and launched it, it was a one-year pilot program. So it's due for a review right now in this month. So we're going to be looking at the stats and how it went. It was offered to staff. We created an appendix, so I can share this program with council if you like. It actually goes into details of everything what we considered, what's the space needs, why and under what circumstances we'll be approving an application for working from home hybrid. So we do not have any mandated work from home, or we do not have any positions that could be totally working from home. But this hybrid model was that 3 days at home and 2 days at work. And we created an appendix which is attached to this program that these are the positions that could apply to this. So out of those many positions, only 9 applications were received. And right now we have throughout the year, the number went up to 14 positions that took up this option. And out of that, 5 have already been back to work. So our intake, sorry, you have a question? No, I'll speak to it. Okay. So the intake for this program's been voluntary, and people can apply, and there's a sign-off by management, and depending on what was required. We also considered in this space issue at a very great length. So we created these touchdown stations in this building and at 205 Queen Street. So those were the spaces provided to folks who vacated an office space. So even doing after all that work, we are still beyond capacity. So that says a lot that our pressure was felt after introducing even work from home program, that we are not successful in hosting so many employees in these buildings and existing infrastructure what we have. I can answer any other further questions if you have on the program, yeah?
Dan has something to add.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just to add and to help answer some of your questions, Councillor Adams, when we looked at moving planning and development to the operations center, we felt that there are really good synergies in having that department working with infrastructure services and parks. They all work together in accounting for and planning for growth within our community, and to have planning and development in the same building as infrastructure services and parks will be very efficient in terms of planning for that growth. So I don't see planning and development as moving administration to the operations center. I see it as moving another operational department to an operations center, where the planning side, obviously bring in planning fees, the building side, building permit fees, and really creating synergies in that department, in that building, while freeing up space for administration in this building.
To follow up to that, just kind of back to my initial point, like this accommodation study is not that old. Like, what was the original thought of P&D, and why is this changing like now? Because I would assume that any new building that we're building should always be built with like future expansion in mind. And if, I'm also curious, kind of the second part to that is then if, option 2 is not approved today, and maybe we say option 1, has like that proposed expansion space been talked about for future expansion with the consultant, and would it remain in the same place, or would it have to move? Yeah,
and thank you for the questions, and through the Deputy Mayor. Prior prior to the Operations Center initial concept design, administration space was always something we were trying to work out. We hadn't come to a conclusion yet. Like we were looking at utilizing 205 Queen Street. We are looking at trying to find additional space in Elora, which is very hard to find at this point. So it really became clear in our recent conversations with the county around how much the township is going to be growing and the fact that we need to make space for administration as well as operations going forward. And as Mr. Gilmore mentioned, there are legislative changes recently that puts a lot more pressure on planning and development to turn around planning applications and building applications, and that has resulted in an impact in our staffing strategy for that department. So I'd say all those items combined had us come forward and consider using the Operations Center to help fill that gap going forward. In terms of moving forward with option 1 versus option 2, moving forward with option 1, Mr. Gilmore showed the conceptual designs of moving forward with option 1 versus option 2. It just means under option 1, we would have to find alternate space for our administration staff because, like I said, we are over capacity in this building, and we'd have to find another way to accommodate staff now and into the future within this building.
Just one other question, and this it might be a silly question. So we're keeping the two, like Elora and Bellwood Garage, I'm going to call them, while we have this new centers. And I see that the indoor salt storage is in phase 2, and I'm assuming you need salt for your equipment. So what is the space time between those phase 1 and phase 2? So is there no salt on site at all in one? Are they having to leave the bays and go out to those garages? Sorry.
Yeah, great question, and through Deputy Mayor Jefferson. So that's a great question. The plan for kind of our salt and sand storage is to continue to use the shed at 600 Glengarry, so the Fergus shop. So it's kind of, if you recall, it's kind of tucked to the right, so it'll be a little inconvenient, but I think we can make that work. There's still some life in that shed yet. We'll still have the salt dome at the Bellwood shop or West Garifraxa shop. And then we'll continue on the Elora side, we'll continue to, we do share salt and sand with the county in Elora, so we'll continue to use that facility. But the shed's in decent shape, so we're going to hang on to that piece of property. We're also planning to, there's the, it's like the fill area, as I call it, in the back of the Fergus shops. Where there's quite a bit of natural space. There's a little creek that runs back there, a little bit of a woodlot. So there's an area back there that's really going to be owned by the township, I think, in the long term as well. But we'll likely look at severing, I think it's about 3 acres or so, between the helipad and also the Fergus shop lands would be severed and sold off for another use at some point. So that's the plan.
That's good. Councillor Adams? Good. Councillor Welton?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Jefferson. Great presentation. Probably could have dedicated a whole afternoon meeting to this. So I do have a lot of questions. Some of them I might be able to wrap up in comments and afterwards. But one of my questions probably for Adam McNabb. I'm just curious about the debt strategy for funding it through the development charges when the uncertainty around Bill 23 and understanding our current situation on that and how that might change in the future. If you could comment on that, please.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Jefferson. The strategy remains, and that we do remain optimistic that we will have sufficient dollars from a development charges revenue standpoint. Just to provide some context from a revenue generation standpoint from development charges, 2022 through the end of November saw $12.2 million. 2021 was $13.4 million. 2020 was 5.7. So a 3-year average of just north of $10 million, and the debt servicing costs associated with this would be on a 20-year basis at 4.7%, which is our latest information from Infrastructure Ontario, about $906,000 annually. So we feel as staff that there is sufficient reserves based on what we've collected to date, plus whatever we would be collecting in the future on future development charges and updates to that strategy.
Another question? I have like 2 or 3 more. Another question would be, I think this one would be for CAO Wilson. Just thinking the real estate property on 205 Queen is quite valuable and quite amenable space. And just wondering if we're thinking kind of boldly enough and creatively enough about the use of that space and perhaps going higher and to accommodate doctors' offices, doctors' accommodations, and then potentially for income property from condominiums or something like that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and through the Deputy Mayor. Yeah, that's something that's on top of mind right now. For all of these properties, we're looking at what is the short, medium, and long-term use of each site. And for that site, being so close to downtown Fergus, right on the water, there are unlimited opportunities for the use of that site. We could use it for healthcare professionals in the short term and develop more of a long-term plan once we know for certain that that site isn't required for staff.
Slightly different tactic. I think this is for you, Adam. I'm just curious if there's an opportunity, kind of following up on Councillor Evoy's comments, to bring the community more to the site. So if we're thinking of how we can build up the site and honoring some of the agricultural legacy there, is there an opportunity to do more intentional community gardens, food bank cooperation in terms of growing vegetables at the site for the food bank? Any of those types of kind of creative collaborations we could look at? I know there's several groups in town who would be interested in that, and I think it'd be good that way. And in addition to that, is there a reason it has to be a 1-story building? Because you could actually create more green space by building up. So big fan of building up. But you could build, if you needed the additional space for planning and development, 2- or 3-story building on the site to a smaller footprint, less asphalt, and more green space and opportunities for other space in the future. So just curious about some of those things.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Wilton, for the questions there, and great questions. So through the Deputy Mayor, so yes, absolutely, there's opportunities to have the public, integrated into the site for, as you mentioned, community gardens. When I provided an overview of the site layout, I highlighted, there is kind of a separate access to the greenhouse and arbor area, and that would be a prime location for some type of community garden use or shared use like that. So I think, we want to distinguish between the operations yard area and those other areas, but there are those opportunities that do exist and that we can consider during through this study and through future design studies. And with respect to 1-story versus multiple story, so yeah, we, certainly that opportunity still exists. I think that the site's been laid out in the way it has, with kind of the works yard in mind, and trying to kind of maximize that space also and lay that out properly. But that's something we can certainly take away with the design team and look at in more detail.
Thank you. 2 quick questions. One is the farmhouse on site. I know it's been mentioned that could be doctor's accommodation, but if the noise study showed that noise mitigation is required on site, I don't think that house would be appropriate for sleeping quarters. So I think it'd be more beneficial as community space or office space personally. So I think that would be something to keep in mind as you go forward.
Yes, thank you. And through the Deputy Mayor, I think we were considering maybe doctor accommodation in the short term prior to the operations center being built, and then maybe an alternate use after that.
And my last comment is just having been at the Bellwood Town Hall a week ago and hearing about the challenges with the accessibility there. I'm just curious, I think it'll feel a little challenging for people in Bellwood to see all this money being spent on this new building when an existing building in Bellwood is facing such structural kind of challenges. So I'm just curious if we can make sure we allocate some money from the sale of some of the existing properties, or if we can find money before then to make sure that Bellwood Hall is brought up to speed in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. And through the Deputy Mayor, we do have plans to look at the requirements to update the hall in Bellwood, and look to engage the community and the Lions out in that area to do that. So that's definitely in our plans going forward.
Councillor Evoy, a question?
Thank you, through you, Madam Deputy. A couple, this one goes to Rashid in HR. With regards to some earlier comments, thank you to my colleague for bringing that up to the table. Very important and very relative. And I have two comments I want to say, three actually. One, many of us are hoping to make sure we discuss this at strat planning, but I think it's really important that we consider with, I don't know who you put that opportunity net out to, but I would be curious if it went far enough to give enough people an opportunity. I've spoken with countless members of our team from across the board who often have said that would be something that they appreciated. So I can't help wondering if all the teams got the equal opportunity for hybrid. And the second question around that is, are we considering new hires? Because tomorrow and tomorrow after that, these people will insist on having the opportunity for hybrid. And I think as we continue to build more and more spaces that have more and more desks, have we actually considered how many of the new hires are going to insist on having the opportunity to mix that up? I love that you've created hot desks. It's really important. Love it. But I think we can still be a little bit more intentional around this option.
Absolutely. So through you and Madam Deputy Mayor, so we considered all that. So when we were writing the program, we consulted many programs in all of the municipalities and communities. All the HR, we have a golden triangle group, so I'm part of that. So all the HR directors, managers from counties and municipalities, we share information. So what we did was we looked at all models and figured out our model. Our model is different, for sure, written for us. When we considered who could be allowed to be on that program for hybrid work from home, there were certain criteria, like I was trying to explain, that we, for management staff, it was a decision by senior management team that managers would be required to be attending work. So we have, say, 33 management staff, or 34 now. So they are growing, so we would like them to be available to their staff to answer questions and to serve, and there is flexibility. So flexible working options are also entertained between each team. So a manager can approve their staff member to be flexible on a day off, or if you want to have an afternoon where you want to work from home, that could be allowed. So our front-facing staff, our staff that is operational, our customer service staff, certain staff members, managers are excluded. So looking at that, we created appendix. So that was possible administration staff, which does not come under one of those criteria, could apply for work from home. So the reason for doing all that work was because we learned from other municipalities and all the comments that was going on, that what could be our audience. So that's how those positions were highlighted, that who can bid into this program and could be approved. That's first one. So you have a comment, I guess?
I do, thank you. Through the Deputy Mayor, I would like to think that this conversation isn't closed. You used an interesting term that said they should be attending work. In my opinion, when a staff is working, whether it's from home or here, they are attending work. And so I think that's where I come into looking forward to deeper discussion. We're talking about the Operations Center here and now, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that I do look forward to further conversation, because I would like to learn more about why managers can't. So if we could have, not for now, but thank you so much.
Just a point of clarification. So attending work means physically they are in the office. So didn't mean they're not working while home, okay?
Great, perfect, thanks. So, anyway, I'm good with that. I just want to make sure that you knew that I do look forward to deeper conversation about hybrid working. And the last piece I wanted to add was to Councillor Wilton's point about building up 205 Queen. What a perfect answer. We can do both. We don't have to have just the doctor's offices. I mean, maybe we move the doctor's offices to the noisier space, and we make Queen Street the live-in space for doctors and future tenants as well. But I'm excited to hear that we're having discussions around options that are outside of the box, that don't physically look like what they've looked like before.
And I have a couple of questions, if that's permitted. I was just wondering, it might be to Adam McNabb, with the 11,046,000 for the facility construction initial estimate, is that based on 2021 pricing for the estimate, or has that been updated with inflation to the 2023 cost?
Yeah, through you, and to your question, Mayor Jefferson, or Deputy Mayor Jefferson, yes, that is the original cost from 2021. We haven't received updated pricing as yet, as we're still very much in the preliminary design phase.
Okay, so would that be something that we can anticipate an increase in pricing? Just overall?
Really difficult to say. If the market trend historically is any indication, we are likely looking at an increase, but until we're in a position where we're able to tender, it's anyone's guess.
Okay. And then with the, I know it's always easier to build while you're already there. So if you're going to do like the P&D addition onto the side of the plans, it's always easier because everybody's already there, everybody's already working. Do you have like a price, maybe comparison of if we do it while we're there, it's 1.54, but if we opt out and we do it later, what the approximate price would be, like the difference would be to our costs? Like it would probably be a negative impact.
Yes, thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor Jefferson. So we haven't done that analysis, but I think that your assumption is correct in that it would certainly be more. There are some economies of scale here with building the large facility and including the addition that would result in savings compared to just constructing an entirely new facility somewhere else or coming back later perhaps and adding the addition at that time. So I don't have the comparison, the number exactly, but I think that the assumption makes sense that it would be more expensive to do it independent of the operations center.
And then when we are talking about the 1.54 and then also with the 11 million for the initial estimate, is that like totally built out? That's like furnished, carpeted, painted, like totally built out, or is this then there need to be furnishing with the desks and et cetera for it to be usable?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So those are things we refer to as soft costs. And so some soft costs have been factored into the estimate and some have not. And I don't believe furnishings and things of that nature were factored into the capital cost estimate. We did include things like the design and for construction and permitting and things of that nature, but I don't believe that the cost estimate includes all of the building furnishings. It would include the finishes, like the walls and floors and everything else, but not furnishings and office equipment.
And also, just to make mention, the 970 Gartshore and the 101 Gregson Court, once they're done with the rezoning, as we've talked about with Queen Street, is it possible to have a discussion prior to throwing up a for sale sign on them to see what internally else we may need for Parks and Rec facility? Because I know in their long-term plan, they were discussing needing another facility, but not immediately. And then also the fire department was discussing that as well. And just to see if it's a suitable property for what we need internally before we extend that out. Just a question if that's possible.
Yep, no, and great question. So yeah, I think there's opportunity to come back to council once those lands are rezoned. And I know the fire master plan does recommend a third station kind of on the north side of the river. I'm not sure if that one meets the NFPA requirements for the response time, that area, but perhaps we can have the fire chief provide some comment on that at a future date. Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Councillor Wilton?
Thank you. Can I just follow up on that comment? Because I live near there, so I can go out to the site fairly often. But the property at 101 Gregson, how many acres is that one? You said 6 total between the two, I think. So it looks like the larger of the two sites. Yeah.
Yeah, so that one, we're looking at between 6 and 7 acres of developable area on that site.
So I think it might impact the way you want to rezone it, because if it was to be a future Parks and Recreation facility, for example, you might be rezoning it more to, Brett could jump in here which way it needs to stay in terms of zoning, but one idea I had was that if it was an indoor turf facility, I think it's large enough for something like that, and then you'd have the shared amenities of the parking lot across the street for weekend tournaments or evening activities, so could be a really nice way to get the township, kind of the public using that space and really maximize that corner of Fergus. So that's just a thought. So it might be just thoughtful, Brett, in terms of the rezoning process as you proceed. Thank you.
Councillor McDonald?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Jefferson. I'm just adding on Councillor Jefferson's, she sort of prompted me about the furniture. I had to pay an expense for a large organization in Guelph, and we just moved a section of cubicles, and it ended up being $90,000 just to move it. I believe it came down to 2 inches in the Office of Research. So we haven't really planned for that type of furniture. Have we done a consult with a designer on what it might look like? Or just, because I'm just afraid, so that's my question, I'm afraid we're going to have a really big bill for furniture, which is so costly. Or can we just keep using what we have? Or
Through Deputy Mayor Jefferson. So yeah, I think wherever possible, we'll reuse what we have. You know, we have decent desks and boardroom tables. We're actually using the old Pilkington Township Council Chambers table in our boardroom. We have it's probably 80 years old. The oak table that's we moved from storage in our shop at Pilkington to 205 Queen. So that is definitely our mindset, is to reuse as much as we can. I think, you know, it'll be a bit of a blank slate within the office area, and so there'll be some new cubicles and, you know, desks associated with that. Right now, the space needs assessment kind of broke it down by the job function and the amount of area that a typical workspace would be for that job function, and so and then certainly, you know, there'll be kind of like some small meeting rooms as well. So I think between kind of reusing, it's tough to estimate right now, because I think we can reuse quite a bit and then just expand our furniture needs incrementally as we grow.
Okay. Councillor Adams?
Through you, Deputy Chair. So I guess my question is now, kind of talking about it's cheaper to do it now than to add on later. So is our staff confident that we have the room needed for like the future expansion over till like the 10, it was till what, 41 or something like that, for those departments identified to be there, including P&D? Or should we be looking at maybe like a third option, as you know, Councillor Wilton had expressed about potentially looking at, like, instead of like an addition here, doing like 2-story up and seeing what that would be. So I'm just kind of curious what the thoughts are there, and if we were to propose that third option, would there be concerns with like project delays or anything at this point?
Yeah, I can start that one. So yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor Adams. So through the Deputy Mayor, I think that's something we can take away and look at. We can talk to the consultants about it, and maybe just take another look at, you know, the options and what's available to us, and different combinations perhaps that we haven't considered.
And through the Deputy Mayor, the Operations Center, including the Planning and Development Department, it's been designed to growth to 2041. So there's space in that building based on the square footage recommended for all of those operational departments to grow over time. And moving planning and development out of this building allows room in this building for the rest of the departments to build and grow over time between now and 2041. So it's meant to address township space across the entire township between now and 2041. Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Wilton?
Just to follow up on that line of conversation, is it possible to build it in such a way, design it in such a way that'd be almost modular in terms of suites, so that the space we don't need, like right away, could be leased out to another office, say a engineering firm or another professional office space, so kind of phase it out, and then as we grow, we start kicking them out, kind of thing. So just curious if that could be brought into the design concept.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Wilton. Very interesting idea, and something that certainly I think we could consider, and how that might work.
Adam?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Jefferson. Also, I think worth keeping in mind is that the way this has been financed through the financing strategy now is to maximize the utilization of development charges. And there are certain developments from an administrative space that are not eligible for DC revenues to support said kind of growth. So we tried, from a staff lens, tried to maximize the utilization of development charges and proceeds from disposition of land so as not to have an impact on taxation. So if we are giving consideration to items that would be beyond the scope of this in the future, we may have to reconsider our financing strategy a little bit.
Any other questions? Comments? Alrighty, so we have a recommendation before us that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington receive as information an update on the new Township Operations Center project as outlined in report number IS 2023-05, and that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington endorses conceptual design option 2 to add the Planning and Development Department to the new Township Operations Center. Can I have somebody make that motion? Councillor Wilton, and a seconder? Councillor Eboy. Discussion? Councillor Adams.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. I'm just, there is a lot of conversation on this topic and a lot of things that staff have said that, they would consider and kind of take back with them. So I just want to make sure that we have a motion that allows us to do that. So, we had talked about an option 3 or building out, and I guess just to help clarify that would be, after today, this is approving the concept design, and the next step that would come back to council would be what on this project? The detailed design based on the approved concept. Yes. So I'm almost wondering if there needs to be another step in there. Yeah, so, yeah, so.
For a question to council, would it make more sense or make your comfort zone better if we took out the conceptual design option 2 from the motion? And then just endorses adding Planning and Development Department to the new Township Operations Center?
I don't know if that does enough, to be honest. Yeah.
Dan would like to speak.
Just something you can consider. Staff do need direction on whether planning and development should be included in the detailed design conversations or not. But we can come back prior to getting too far down the road in detailed design to have a discussion around the additional items that council brought up today. So maybe we could keep the resolution as is and add another and that staff report back on the additional considerations brought up by council today prior to detailed design. Does that make sense?
It's for discussion, yeah.
I agree with Councillor Adams. If we take out the option 2 portion, and then staff come back with what they have determined. Do you need to have the option 2 to give them jurisdiction? If we just remove the option 2 from the motion,
Through the deputy mayor, is it removing that piece? I guess council wants that additional conversation prior to detailed design to get a level of comfort whether planning and development should move to the operations center. Is that correct?
No, I think we'd be best to let Councillor Adams speak.
Okay.
What she's asking.
I can clarify what I was asking. Thank you. I wasn't sure if
Go ahead, Councillor.
Wilson was talking to me. By removing it, yes, we're including planning and development and what that looks like with going up or going out or, giving them that flexibility.
Councillor Adams?
Thank you, through you, Deputy Chair. I think for me, it's not so much whether we're including planning and a development department. I think that's like a staff decision. I think it's been identified that there needs to be more room in that administrative space at the operations center. And we've talked about how, have we looked at all options? Is there, there's other properties out there. If we're not keeping doctors long-term in the house, is there opportunity to renovate that? Would that give planning and development or whatever staff needs that space that they need there? So for me, it's not as important, like that it's been identified that there needs to be additional space, whether that's through hybrid or the house or on a second layer here or the addition as proposed in option 2. I'm just at this point was unsure if like the concept design of option 2 is the best and whether we need to look at it in other options. So I think too, for me, there's a lot of parts about, and a lot of these conversations are ongoing, so I can understand like what we're doing with these existing properties and when they actually become like surplus. Because for me, I'm like, we don't even have salt for 10 years. We have driver, is that right? Phase 1 to phase 2 is about 10 years, the plan, roughly. So it's just kind of like trying to conceptualize all of that. Like I definitely, there's an identified need for more space. So for me, whether it's planning and development or just that staff have identified a need for more space.
But do we have to earmark it as planning and development for the development charges funding of the build?
The planning and development contribution would be largely driven by the building reserve presently, which kind of mitigates the need to have development charges fund administrative space, which is ineligible. So it's more that the building department has funds available and is a candidate for the move to the operations center for the synergies that COL Wilson had identified earlier.
Councillor Wilton?
I'm comfortable with Dan's or CAO Wilson's suggestion that we keep the recommendation as is and add an and, that staff report back in, I don't know if we can be as specific as a number of months, but on the options discussed during today's committee of the whole meeting. So I think there were 2 to 3 kind of things you could look into further and report back, and I think that'd be a comfortable step, just a step between that and the final, like a more detailed design.
Councillor Adams.
If I could just add, maybe included in that report back is a recommendation on what the house on that site, like the best recommendations for use of the house on that site would be as well.
Further discussion or vote.
Okay, and further discussions allowed on an amendment?
I think so, unless you
Okay.
feel it's exhausted, you could just call the question.
Okay, so it's, our mover was Councillor Wellington and seconded by Councillor Evoy. I almost called your name. So the friendly amendment would be, and that staff report back on options discussed.
I put options / alternatives discussed.
Options/alternatives discussed at the committee of the whole meeting. Do we need today's date?
Sure. Yep, we would put a date in. Yep.
Of February 13th, 2023, including
March
future,
13th.
March 13th, lost a month, including future use of the house.
We could
Does
bring
that-
it up a little bit.
That's
That's
okay?
the basic.
So then, is that okay? And then, that's okay? Alrighty. Any further discussion on that?
Thanks for that, Deputy Mayor. It was a lot, but I appreciate it.
Okay, so then we can put that to a vote. All right, so all in favor with the amendment, and that's all of us. So that's carried. That's good? We're just gonna take like a 10-minute, do you want 10? 10?
10.
A 10-minute recess so that we can find Mayor Waters and facilities. Alrighty, agenda item 8.7, temporary extension of liquor license Grand River Raceway report from Lisa Miller, Deputy Municipal Clerk.
This is a fairly straightforward item. It's just the Raceway has requested that we pass this recommendation for them to extend the licensed area for one-day events, and the wording of the recommendation is required by the AGCO.
Okay, so then the recommendation before us is that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington has no objection to the extension of the proposed extended licensed area at the Grand River Raceway as outlined in their letter dated February 16th, 2023 with respect to the Industry Day event scheduled for Monday, August 7th, 2023. Can I have somebody to make that motion? Councillor McDonald, and then a seconder? Councillor Adams? And discussion on that, or nothing? Oh, Councillor McDonald?
I go to Industry Day every year, and it's really nice to see the ladies get out in the races. More so, that's what Battle of the Bells is. And it is pretty exciting for anyone who hasn't gone. So I'm happy to see this passed. Thank you.
So no more information, discussion? We're good? Okay. Can we put that to a vote? And all in favor? That's everybody. So that's carried. Alrighty. Thank you, Lisa. Information items. The Water Supply Master Plan Overview. The verbal report. Hi, Colin. Thanks.
Hello again. So this is a continuation on council orientation. We are going to be presenting kind of different plans and master plans to council over the next few months, and we thought we'd start March Committee of the Whole off with an overview of our water supply master plan and some of the action items kind of coming out of that, and provide council with an update on where we stand with those with implementation of the water supply master plan. And Adam's going to join me as well a little later to present on some of the specific projects. So just background. So hopefully this figure looks familiar. This was from the standard of care training there last week. So it's this. It's essentially a continuous improvement cycle, and where we have plan, do, check, improve, and so I thought this was kind of appropriate because this is kind of the way staff kind of visualize how we manage the water system here. So on the plan side of things, we have like our master plan. So our water supply master plan, we're about to embark on a servicing master plan. You heard Ryan earlier talk about a stormwater master plan. That's the planning side of things. On the do side, we've got specific capital projects, so like our F2 and F5 well optimizations, our new well exploration program, which Adam's going to speak to a little later. Things like implementing source protection policies. These are on the do side of things. And then check. So for the water program, we're continuously getting new data, new information. We're drilling new wells, conducting pumping tests. So all that information's kind of coming to us. We also monitor our water wastewater system capacities on an ongoing basis. And then improve. So then we take all that information and update things. So we have like a groundwater model. We have the understanding of our geology and hydrogeology in the area, how it will sustain our water needs into the future. Everything that we do kind of feeds into that, helps build our understanding, and then we start the cycle kind of all over again. So it's a pretty neat process, and we really got to see it come together over the last few years with the Tier 3 water budget. So I think I'll start there before we get into the water supply master plan, because a lot of this work either preceded the water supply master plan or kind of proceeded in parallel. And so we worked closely with the GRCA, the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks were actually part of our project team with this for the Tier 3 water budget. The province actually was the funding contributor for this as well. Those funds flowed through GRCA back in the day to fund a number of studies. So I've listed the 5 main studies that were completed as part of the Tier 3 water budget. And so physical characterization report, a groundwater flow model and calibration report, risk assessment, water quantity threats analysis, and a climate change assessment. And if you want to delve into these reports, I find them fascinating. But if you want, they're on the Source Water website, and there's the link. They're all there. So I just thought I'd provide just a quick overview. Just some background. So we're kind of using some terms, and I know you guys, council has heard some of these during orientation, but we're talking about aquifers and aquitards. So aquifers are areas where there's high permeability, water moves quite easily through aquifers. Aquitards are quite dense, and quite often water goes very slow. So very low permeability. They could be clays, silts, or really dense bedrock. And those things are what we refer to as confining layers or aquitards. We also have recharge areas too, right? So up on the right of that figure there, we're getting recharge coming into the groundwater system from the surface. We also have unconfined aquifers, which we also refer to as the water table in a lot of cases. Locally, we have what's shown on the figure too as a perched water table, which could just be sitting above a clay or silt till lens, but isn't really connected to a broader system. I thought this figure was good too. It actually shows the different wells, the different types of wells, and you'll hear Adam speak to this a little later. With the artesian conditions, like how is it we get water actually that's 150 meters below the surface coming to the surface. So it kind of shows you when you've got areas under high pressure, it could be a recharge area, it can actually push that water, won't want to come to the surface when you actually drill into it. And that's the characteristics of a confined aquifer. So just want to get some terms, in front of council I just thought this figure really displayed kind of what the system looks like here. So we take that kind of conceptual understanding. I know the fonts are tiny there, but it's essentially, we have the layers of a cake. So this is a cross section extending to the Orangeville Moraine to the right and over to Elmira to the left. So this is an east-west cross section of the township's geology, basically, starting Orangeville over to Elmira. And so features, you can see kind of overburden deposits there, so sands and gravels, silts and tills, and then kind of the solid colors, starting with the kind of the browns are the bedrock zones. And you can kind of see the blue layers kind of near the bottom of the figure. Those are the really good municipal aquifers there. So kind of where we're seeing the water bearing zones. We refer to it as the gas port formation. And typically when we're drilling our municipal wells, that's the zone we're aiming for. It's generally about 13 to 22 meters thick in Elora and Fergus. And it's not present everywhere, but it's a great producing zone in terms for municipal wells. So as part of the Tier 3 work, we created a model of the groundwater system. So this just shows you the area that the model encompasses. So we've got, again, Fergus and Elora. It actually includes the wells up in Alma. There's Maiden. There's a well in Maiden that's included in the model domain. And it's what we refer to as a regional groundwater model. So that is in GRCA's possession. They have kind of the ownership rights for that model. This is kind of another view of it, like a three-dimensional view of the surface, where you can kind of see the greens are the lower elevations and the reds are the higher elevations within that model. And you can kind of see the gorges coming through, like you can see the Grand River kind of sneaking through the middle there, Irvine Creek heading up, and then the Grand River kind of heading towards the northeast. So again, this is another snapshot from the Center Wellington groundwater model. So this is essentially zones of groundwater flow. And again, the dark blue, again, not a lot of flow, so we have a very, call it hydraulic conductivity. So very, very low hydraulic conductivity in those blue layers, very high hydraulic conductivity in the green. And so water's moving again in these permeable zones in the deep bedrock in those green layers. So we have the ability to model that and kind of run scenarios in the model, pumping scenarios to see how the wells will interact and you know, kind of anticipate any issues in advance. Goat Island, yeah, sure. So that's another formation. It's this is the naming nomenclature essentially for the different groundwater formations or bedrock formations within the area. So Goat Island, Gasport, Guelph Formation, Cabot Shale. Yeah, there's quite a few. So. So just so the risk assessment report kind of identified additional field data collection. So I'm just kind of going over some of the key recommendations from this report. It's 2020, and so as part of that, you know, recommends that we do, as we're looking for new wells, that we're looking at potential drinking water threats for those new wells. The Center Wellington groundwater model is a tool that we can use to assess future water takings, whether it's the township or whether it's maybe another water user within that model area. We can assess groundwater use and potential impacts to other water users in the area from using that model. We can also, it's also recommended that you know, the township implement water conservation programs to reduce per capita water demands, defer expensive capital expansions, and improve local ecosystem health. And then it also recommends that we update the model on a regular basis. So kind of that continuous improvement cycle. We're gathering new data, new pumping tests are being completed. We're expanding our understanding of the groundwater system, and that should be updated in that groundwater model. So in terms of water quantity threats, so again, kind of one of the largest threats to groundwater availability was reduction in recharge. So as we grow, you know, we're creating impervious surfaces, and so we want to make sure that we're still, even though we're doing that, we're still recharging the groundwater system. So things like Adam mentioned earlier, low impact development kind of plays a key role into that, where we're creating infiltration measures as part of development, whether it's you know, new commercial sites or residential subdivisions that we're infiltrating kind of that clean water back into the ground. Yeah, for sure.
Deputy Mayor, I have a question about water taking.
Sure.
So we had all this conversation a few years ago about a certain group coming in and taking water, and then I was under the impression that it was just another group taking water. Where are we exactly with the bottled water piece and our water?
For sure. Yeah, through Deputy Mayor Jefferson. So, yeah, Nestle kind of divested of their water bottling business. So the new owner is, I believe, Blue Triton is the corporate entity name. And yeah, it's been very quiet. Like, they run their operations in Aberfoyle. They still have wells in Erie and at Aberfoyle. But I think the most recent activity, they demolished the structure that was on site on Middlebrook at their property on Middlebrook Road. But yeah, not a lot really to update. No, I don't. No, I don't think we have any indication. It's been very quiet. So, excuse me. Yeah. This question. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's okay.
Councillor McDonald.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Jefferson. They would have to make an application to actually take water from the ground,
Correct.
and it would come across our desks.
100%.
When
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so the permit to take water for that location has expired. And so anything any water taking there, they'd have to do all the testing. But that groundwater model kind of, you know, the information that we've collected out there, we have new monitoring locations, new wells, you know, that will all kind of piece together, helps a bit further our understanding of what's going on in the groundwater system out there. So it's, yeah, hard to say what they're going to do, but there's definitely a regulatory process that they need to follow. And I would just make council aware with some of the changes, maybe a couple of years ago now, you know, municipal councils do have like a veto, companies that are going to locate in a community for water bottling purposes need to get a resolution of council for support over a certain threshold of water taking. So I think it was like, I always forget the number, but it's like 379 cubic meters per day or something. If they exceed that, they need to come to the local council and get a resolution in support of their operation. So.
Councillor Adams?
Yeah.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Just a question related to kind of that and the last point on the water quantity threat. Policies to consider impact to municipal supply for increased existing and non-municipal water takings. So what kind of policies would we be looking at there?
Yeah, definitely. Through Deputy Mayor Jefferson. So those are source protection policies, right? In terms of quantity. So those are approved now. They were drafted through this process and are in legal effect currently. So yeah, that's already been done. So yeah, exactly. Yep.
Councillor Eboy?
Thank you, through you. Can you make sure that we get a copy of that? Because I know I'd be very curious
For sure.
to see what that policy is and what those numbers look like.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll keep moving along. So again, another assessment that was completed as part of the Tier 3 of the climate change assessment, and essentially, you know, a little counterintuitive in terms of the outcome of this, but with the milder winters, kind of more freeze-thaw cycles, more kind of gradual melting of the snowpack, actually is a good thing for our groundwater system. So you would, with those kind of more frequent melting cycles, we're actually going to see more recharge in the groundwater system. So that's good news. And because our water is coming from such a deep zone, the Gasport Formation, it's relatively drought resistant. So that was the kind of outcomes from that study. Yes, yeah.
Councillor Wilton?
Just curious, because that is counterintuitive, the groundwater recharge rate. Did that take into consideration that there's generally lower snowfall in the winter, or was it kind of a separate situation?
Oh boy, yeah. So I'm not 100% familiar which IPCC models they used, but I know they took a number of them and tried to pick an average, like future scenario. They modeled it out, I think 30 or 40 years as well. So yeah, kind of all those kind of snowpack assumptions. I think it's just generally, I don't know if our precipitation volumes are changing too much, like total precipitation, but yeah, I think recharge was remaining relatively, was actually improving over time. Yeah. Okay. So with that background, we'll go into the Water Supply Master Plan, which was approved by Council in 2019. And with that, I'm going to ask that Adam come to the podium here and just kind of provide some highlights from the master plan and an update on implementation of the kind of high priority projects out of the master plan. So, there you go.
Hey, thank you, Colin, and hello again. All right, so the water supply master plan, which was completed in 2019. So this was a plan to establish how is the township going to supply water to our growing population to the 2041 timeframe. So the study was completed in accordance with the municipal class environmental assessment process, which means public consultation was done as part of the study with residents, agencies, indigenous communities. And the key question is, how much water does the township need and where will it come from? So in order to know how much we need, you have to know how much we're going to be using in the future. So our current system capacity is approximately 12,400 cubic meters per day. The predicted 2041 peak demand, these are peak demand numbers, is 19,400 cubic meters per day. So that's an estimated deficit of approximately 7,000 cubic meters per day. To put things in context, a municipal well supplies a good well supplies between 1,000 to 2,000 cubic meters per day. So the equivalent of approximately 4 new municipal wells are needed to meet future demand. So the preferred strategy that was recommended through the water supply master plan was to optimize our current wells. We have a few wells that are kind of underperforming and have the potential to supply more water, and that's for Fergus wells F2 and F5. And also to add 4 new wells through investigation in new well areas. So here on the map you can see Fergus well F2 and F5 where they're located, and then the 4 preferred new well areas that have been identified kind of in the rural area in the outskirts of Elora and Fergus to some extent. So there were more than 4 well areas that were looked at through the master plan, and these were the 4 preferred. So I want to update you on some projects that have resulted from the recommendations of the water supply master plan. So the first one is the replacement well for Fergus well F2. So the replacement well, which we're calling F2R, R for replacement, was completed in 2022. And F2R is quite a bit deeper than the original well, and is certainly the bedrock interval that is supplying the water. The open bedrock interval is deeper, and also there's a steel casing that extends deeper in the bedrock to prevent shallower water from coming into the well, which means it's drawing from a much deeper interval. So why this is important is the old well had a designation that stated it was interacting with surface water. So it was drawing water that could be coming from, for instance, the Grand River, or if there was some type of contamination issue, shallow, it could be drawing water from that shallow interval. And we wanted to have that designation removed, which would ensure that it's a better water source, it's more protected, and it would have less treatment requirements also. So the new well, replacement well, is deeper. You also have less potential interactions with private well users. So in that part of Fergus, there are actually folks who are still on private wells, and we want to ensure that we're not interfering with any private well taking in that area. So the results of the study suggest the raw water quality. We refer to raw water as being just the water that's pumped from the well before it gets treated. The raw water quality is very good at this location. It met all the requirements for the health-based regulated drinking water parameters. So the current permitted pumping capacity at that location is 409 cubic meters per day. But through testing in this replacement well, the tests suggest that this well, the new well, could actually supply up to 1,700 cubic meters per day. So quite a big increase. And the township, the next step here is for us to undertake a municipal class EA study to increase the permitted pumping capacity from that location. So similarly, well F5, we've drilled a replacement well at well F5. The issue at well F5 has to do with with something we refer to as turbidity in the raw water. So that's actually just sand, silt, and clay particles that come in with the water and make it kind of murky. This well has historically had high turbidity. And the idea is through drilling a new deeper well, we might be able to isolate a deeper zone that doesn't have those same turbidity issues. The permitted capacity at the location is 1,960 cubic meters per day, but we're only actually pumping about 20% of that because of these turbidity issues. Because the faster we pump, the more turbidity comes into the raw water. Yes, Councilor McDonald.
Deputy Mayor Jefferson. So are you going to drill beside it? Are you a different spot? Can I ask that yet?
Yes, of course. Yeah, thank you for the question. So we have already drilled the replacement well, and it is beside the existing well F5. It's actually not very far away, only about 13 meters away on the same site. So the well's already been drilled, and yes, it's located very close to the existing well. Although it's similar to F2, this one's drilled much deeper and cased over a different interval.
And it's all clear?
Yeah, so there is still some residual turbidity that's coming through even with the new well, albeit at a much lower concentration than what we've observed historically. We think that at this site there might be a need for a longer term treatment process to remove that turbidity. We're looking into that right now. We have a study underway to look at what is the nature of the turbidity, how high is it, and what might be required in terms of treatment.
Councillor Evoy?
Through you, Madam Deputy. So am I to understand that turbidity in and of itself is not dangerous? It's unsightly, but it's not dangerous. And so the work then is to remove it. It doesn't present any kind of a physical or health danger to our community for drinking.
Yeah, so turbidity in and of itself is generally not dangerous, as you say. It is a regulated parameter, and the reason why it is because it can interfere with chlorination of water. So those particles can react with the chlorine that we add to water, which reduces the effectiveness of the chlorine in disinfecting the water. So that's why it's a regulated parameter. Okay, so I'll carry on. So yeah, I mentioned that study's underway to look at treatment options at that site. So the other big program that we're doing right now is our new well exploration program, and Colin alluded to this. So this is the 4 new well areas. So we have drilled test wells at these 4 locations, and we're starting to get some good data back from those locations. And what the data is telling us is that areas 3, 5, and 7 could be viable future production wells. Area 8 was not looking as promising. So further study is going to be undertaken in 2023 to hone in on specifically areas 3 and 7. These are areas that look good. They're also kind of located in good geographic areas relative to our existing water distribution networks and future development areas. So it's a bit strategic with these locations, maybe starting there. And the goal is to bring bring one of these new well areas online by the 2026 timeframe to become a supply well and be feeding water into our system. And this is in line with the recommendations of the Water Supply Master Plan that said you should be aiming to bring new production online by that 2026 timeframe. Oh, Colin mentioned artesian conditions, so I think we've talked about it at past council meetings, but Area 3 is an artesian well, which refers to the water is actually flowing to surface under natural conditions. So we've drilled the well, and if you just leave that well open, you'll just see water just coming out of the well to surface. So it's kind of a unique setting, and in the world of water supply, actually kind of a favorable condition. It implies that it can supply quite a bit of water and less pumping required. Okay, another big undertaking that we're in the midst of now is our well field capacity assessment. So in our current permit to take water, which regulates the water that we can pump and that's issued by the Ministry of the Environment, There was a requirement for us to undertake a well field capacity assessment when we reach 50% of our permitted capacity, or as we were approaching our renewal date for our next permit to take water renewal, which is due in June of 2024. So we hit that threshold, and so in the fall of 2022, we started this well field capacity assessment, which is essentially looking at doing pump testing of our existing municipal supply wells and determining how much water can these wells supply sustainably and what impact does that have on the wider aquifer. So we did some pump testing work, and we kind of broke it into different clusters of wells. So there were 2 in Fergus and 1 in Elora. And we had good results in Fergus. In Elora, we observed some interference with private wells associated with our taking. And we also had some well performance issues, which wells over time their productivity decreases naturally over time. So that has happened. So we wanted to kind of clean those wells up and repeat the test to see what it shows us. So we're going to be repeating the Elora test very soon, hopefully in the coming months, to finish off that well field capacity assessment, submitting the results to the Ministry of the Environment for their review in anticipation of our next permit to take water renewal. Okay, and I'm going to turn it back over to Colin to speak to our wastewater capacity.
Great, thanks, Adam. So, yeah, so we every year we're monitoring our available capacities from a water supply perspective, wastewater treatment perspective very closely. There's a Ministry of the Environment guidance document that we follow that kind of outlines the procedure. This is just a screenshot from the ministry's website. It's quite lengthy, but it provides some direction on how to calculate what we refer to as the uncommitted reserve capacity for water supply and wastewater treatment plants. So this is looking at our ability to supply water and treat wastewater. So just to provide council with a summary of where we stand. So and this will, I think, help answer Councillor Wilson's question on firm capacity. And so from a total permitted capacity perspective, so if you add up what our permitted capacity in all our wells, all 9 wells, we have 15,031 cubic meters per day. And so when we calculate what's available, we actually remove F2 because it's been offline for quite some time. That's our Goody well, right? Groundwater under the direct influence of surface water. So that's been removed. And then we also, firm capacity means that we take the largest well out of service. And so we've removed, in order to, things like maintenance comes up, right? Wells, a pump may go down, or we need to perform some maintenance. So we want to make sure that we have enough reserve capacity to make sure we're able to maintain the system even at peak demands. And so we come up with a firm capacity number when we're doing our calculations of 12,658 cubic meters per day. So that's the total supply capacity. And then we take it's like an accounting practice, I think, Dan and Adam will appreciate this. It's basically a balance sheet approach where our revenues, our supply capacities, our expenses are the waters committed for our existing residents and businesses. But then we also earmark capacity for future businesses and residents as well. So I can explain that on the next slides, but just to put some of these numbers in context, our average daily demand, so looking at all 365 days of the year last year, we averaged just under 6,000, about 5,900 meters cubed per day. And kind of a key number for us as we're making sure we're always staying below what our permitted capacities are. Our max day, the peak day of the year, which was June 26, 2022, was just under 8,000 cubic meters per day. So, yeah, Councillor Evoy has a question there. So, yeah.
Councillor Evoy?
Thank you, through you. Is there a taste for or a need for educating our communities and talking more about how to manage our water use? We don't often talk about it here. I come from communities that do. Is there either a need and or a taste to do such a thing?
Yeah, through Deputy Mayor Jefferson, absolutely. Yeah, I think the conversation, we're going to be having more about water conservation, water efficiency, like making the best use of the resource that we have and is so precious, right? So, yeah, definitely. I think we do a little bit now, but there's definitely more we can do. We have a water conservation coordinator now. That was a recommendation coming out of the master plan. And so the goal of that position is really going to help have those conversations, and whether it's kind of low flow fixtures or lawn irrigation, or even kind of working with our partners in business as well, how to make the most efficient use of water.
I ask formally that you keep council abreast and informed, because I'm sure we can come up with some pretty creative ways to support that initiative.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. So so maximum day. So we're about 63% of our firm capacity. So that's where we're running today. Just a note there too. Our max day occurred when there was a fire training exercise. I think there was like a county-wide exercise occurring in Fergus. They had about 3 or 4 hydrants like wide open for most of the day. So it really put a strain on the system, but we've definitely learned some lessons from that day. So, but certainly around that day, it was a very dry June last year, if everyone recalls. So we had a lot of water use. I know the splash pads were very busy, and lawns were being watered in June of last year because it was so dry. So it was just something that to keep in mind as we go forward.
Councillor Wilton has a question.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, just curious with that 62.6% of total firm capacity, is there a provincial recommendation for where municipalities should sit at firm capacity?
Good question. Through Deputy Mayor Jefferson. So the general rule of thumb, so you don't want to be getting like too close to 85% of your, I'd say, total capacity of what you have. So 85% is either whether it's wastewater treatment capacity or water capacity. You need a little bit of flexibility, and so so I think we've got some comfort there, but we do know the growth is here and it's coming. So yeah, we're definitely seeing on the water side kind of an upward trend. So the projects that Adam is working on definitely are high priority to keep us in that range. Yeah. So on the wastewater treatment capacity side of things, so we have a rated capacity of 8,000 meters cubed per day at the Fergus plant. We see about half of that rated capacity on an average day basis. Again, this is kind of taking the total flow of the year, divided by 365 days, and we get about 4,000, or about 51% of the plant capacity. In Elora, relatively new plant there, and fairly expanded in 2014. And we have a current capacity of 5,000 meters cubed per day, and our average daily flow is about 1,800 meters cubed per day, and about 36% of plant capacity. And just those are a couple aerial photos of the plants there, just for interest. So just some other things we consider, again, as part of this balance sheet approach and the expenses side of the ledger. So we have things that we're monitoring as part of our uncommitted reserve capacity calculation. So under unconnected lots and registered and draft plan approved subdivisions, we keep close track of those numbers. Confirmed and potential rezonings, allowances for infill and intensification development, and industrial, commercial, and institutional sector development. So we have built into our calculation making sure we have enough available capacity for, you know, development that's approved but not yet constructed. So plan of subdivision that we know is going to get built out someday. We want to make sure we have enough capacity for that reserved for that day, as well as things like you know, infill intensification, which is hard to anticipate, so we keep set reserves in place for water capacity for those things, and things that, you know, like the hospital lands, right? Like we're the old Groves Hospital, which isn't using probably much water today, but we know will eventually redevelop into something, and there will be water use there at some point in the future. So we want to make sure that we're kind of keeping tabs on those things and making sure we've allocated some water capacity for that sort of redevelopment or development in the future.
Councillor Welton.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor Jefferson. I'm just curious if the master plan spoke to community wells, so something like a Pine Meadows, or there's a community well plan for a subdivision that's pending out in Bellwood. So I'm just curious, if those fail, what is the responsibility of the municipality? Does the municipality have to take on responsibility of providing drinking water and to those types of well owners?
For sure. Yeah, through Deputy Mayor Jefferson. So private wells, so unless it's an interference issue where we would have some sort of, I guess, responsibility to correct an issue that we as a municipality caused, definitely, you know, we would do that. If it's you know, like a large scale like contamination issue, I think you know, we'd have to, that issue would come back to council, and we'd probably be working with the Minister of the Environment and, you know, seeing how that issue could be remedied, whether it's treatment or extension of the municipal supply, and then who pays for that at the end of the day. The subdivisions with private wells, like with communal wells, like you know, kind of the ones in the rural areas. So those are kind of the responsibility of the owner. So they have a permit to take water issued from the ministry, just like we as a municipality have. So it's fully would be the owner's responsibility to maintain like a safe, secure water supply for their residents. In some cases, we do, as a municipality, get involved with a municipal responsibility agreement, which is something that just kind of provides a bit of a backstop to in the scenario I think you're thinking about, where okay, maybe there's a bankruptcy or something goes wrong. You know, the township would have some funds available that would be posted in a form of securities to operate that system. So those are something that we do have in place in other kind of private systems, and as more show up, yeah, that's something that we'll be considering and having discussions with the developer on as well. Yeah.
Councillor Evoy.
Thank you, through you, Madam Deputy. Curious, that spurred another thought for me. Are water charges included in DCs as a rule?
I'll take a crack at that, and then I'll point to Adam. He can correct me if I say anything wrong. So water charges definitely are included in development charges. So there's a category of growth-related projects that are water-related in our development charges bylaw and background study. And so basically all the projects that Adam referenced, except maybe the wellfield capacity assessment, the ones that are growth related, like F2, F5, the new well exploration program, those are all funded by DCs and by growth. So yeah, so those aren't being funded by the taxpayer.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So just some key takeaways. So on the water supply capacity side, there is sufficient capacity for growth based on our current permitted capacity and expected growth rate. And as Adam mentioned, the timing for the next water supply in 2026 is recommended. So still following those master plan recommendations. Excuse me. On the wastewater treatment side, sufficient wastewater treatment capacity for growth based on current permitted capacity and expected growth rate. And, you know, we do have in the 10-year forecast a fairly large project to expand the Fergus wastewater treatment plant. So we're going to take a closer look at the timing and kind of the sequencing of that through the water wastewater servicing master plan. So that's it's kind of interesting just looking at the trends. We are starting to see water demands increase over year. But interestingly, at the Fergus wastewater plant, we've been hovering around 51% for a number of years now. And so even though we've had the growth, we haven't seen it at the wastewater treatment plant, which is, well, could be a water conservation thing. You know, we're seeing just, you know, with building code upgrades and people replacing things, they're just automatically going to more efficient fixtures. But also our capital program too, we've really honed in on you know, inflow and infiltration sources of water coming into the sanitary sewer system. So hopefully that's having a positive effect in terms of capacity at the plants. And I think we've got one more slide here just to kind of talk about the next steps. And so next steps, as Adam mentioned, initiate the class environmental assessment for increasing the capacity at well F2. And then proceeding with groundwater studies for new well areas 3 and 7. And council will recall area 3 is off County Road 18. And then area 7 is off Side Road 15. Establish a new treatment solution at well F5R, and then submit the results of the wellfield capacity assessment to the ministry. So that's all scheduled for this year. In 2024, we'll be looking to initiate the Class EA for new wells in area 3 and 7, design new facilities for F2R and F5R, and obtain required permits, submit permit to take water renewal applications, which is due June 2024. And again, that continuous improvement cycle, kind of update that Tier 3 groundwater models to reflect the new wells, replacement wells, and the new data that we've collected in the previous 4 or 5 years. 2025, we're looking at updating the water wastewater rate study and financial plan, and constructing those new facilities at F2 and F5, and then begin the design process for one of the new either 3 or 7, the new wells at area 3 or 7. So that's it. It's been a long day. So thanks everyone. Happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Adams.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. Just a question on the F2 replacement. Like in the slide, you can see how close it is in the residential area there. So I'm just kind of curious what impact that has had to the existing neighborhoods there, and will that EA study also incorporate that? And I'm kind of curious what the facility is around that, if it's just kind of surrounding the pump or if it's office space.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'll let Adam speak to that, and
Thank you.
kind of what the neighbors can expect kind of next, for sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. Thanks, Councillor Adams. Good question. So yes, very observant. It's located very close to the homes on either side. And so we've got through the bulk of the, like the heavy equipment phase of the project with the drilling. And so the next phase will be constructing a new well facility there. So there was a building that was there. That building was demolished to accommodate drilling of the new well. And so we'll be building a replacement facility, and it will look much more modern than the old facility did. We can work in design elements to make it kind of fit a little bit in the neighborhood there. And so through the municipal Class EA study that we're going to kick off this year, we'll take all of that into consideration, and then we'll move to a detailed design phase, design the facility, then construct it.
Other questions? No? Okay. Thank you, Colin. Alrighty, so 9.2, Treasurer's Annual Statement 2022 Investments with Adam.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Jefferson. Both this item and the subsequent item are really housekeeping in nature, and for more informational reports, there's no recommendations stemming from these. But if there are any questions related to either the township's investments or the interest-free loans that we currently have in place that are active, I'm happy to take any questions with council.
Councillor Evoy?
Thank you. Through you, can you just, in a quick overview, how do these people qualify for interest-free loans?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Jefferson, and thank you for the question, Councillor Evoy. A lot of it is application-based, and the last item in that spreadsheet is CIP loans, which are also application-based, and perhaps Brett would be better suited to talk to the intricacies of how those come to pass, but by and large, they are application-based.
And our community is well aware that they can apply for such?
My understanding is absolutely yes.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Well, as far as the community improvement plan, those are grants for people to improve their building facades. And so in the past, we offer applications that get approved could be a combination of a grant and or a loan. And the interest-free part of the loan is the part that Adam's referring to in this report. So usually they're capped at $5,000 or $6,000, so they're small loans.
Through the Deputy Mayor, just a point of clarification, the CIP loans, staff have delegated authority to award those, and it's a defined process through the CIP program. Any other interest-free loans have to come to council for approval. So as part of the application, a report is generated and brought to council for consideration.
Understood, and just to clarify that. So I'm curious how they were capped at 5.
The cap of the $5,000 loan is through the CIP program. Some of the other ancillary loan items, like that would be an aggregate amount of the number of loans within the CIP program. So it wouldn't be for an individual building owner within the township. So that would be an aggregate amount, whereas the other two loans, there's a cap, I believe, are at $50,000 for the other interest-free loan items.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions for Adam? Seeing none? Okay. Thanks, Adam. Bronwyn. We're doing 9.4 and Bronwyn needs. Just stand there. Okay, so the minutes from the Heritage Center Wellington, January 10th, 2023. Who's that?
They're just on there for information
For just
purposes.
information. So questions then? Councillor McDonald?
I'm not sure how I address this to you, probably CAO Wilson, through you, Deputy Mayor Jefferson. Do we have a councillor sitting on Heritage Committee currently? I'm not seeing, we just have a chair. Does a councillor normally sit on Heritage Committee? Okay. So,
Sorry, go ahead.
so I guess my real question is, who's overseeing this if there's not a councillor of interest there at the moment?
Through the Deputy Mayor, normally there is a member of council on that committee. Currently there is not. Staff are in the meetings and assisting with coordination. There is a chair of the Heritage Committee as well that runs the meetings. We are going to be moving forward shortly with changes to terms of references to various committees, and that'll come forward to council at a future meeting. And then once we're in a position to put a member of council on that committee, we'll bring that forward as well. So it's coming soon.
Councillor Evoy?
Thank you. Through you, to clarify, CAO Wilson, it's not our job to oversee what happens at the meetings anyway, right? Just to be clear.
Members of council are there to represent council. They're not really
Right.
there to change the outcome of the meeting.
Thank you.
Another question, Councillor McDonald?
and then the minutes of Heritage come across to council for approval? Correct, thank you. Just for receive? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks. Alrighty, so then I need somebody to make a motion for adjournment. Councillor Wilton, seconded by Councillor Addams, and all in favor? That's all of us, so we're good to go. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.